How nervous were you to interview Josh Harris?
Dude, that's a really funny story. Like, he was sitting there, he's sitting in the front row. And I was like, man, should we try to get him? And so I just went up and I was like, hey, man, I know the security guard that was with him. Like, it's good to know security guards. And he was like, yeah, man. Like, hey, Josh, this is Logan Paulson. He works for the team. He was like, hey, Josh, really nice to meet you. Would you mind doing like a 2-question interview at halftime? And then he goes, just keep it general. And yeah, no problem. He was so kind and generous with his time. And like, it was great.
And I thought it was so great that he was just like, no, I'm going to sit right there. I'm going to get kind of a feel of the sidelines. But especially when it's raining, like, I thought it was great that he was on the sideline.
Again, as a former player, it felt really cool in the rain to see him hanging out, him and his boy. I got a ton of respect for that. And, he was great in the interview, really accommodating. So thank you, Mr. Josh Harris. But yeah, man, I was a little nervous.
Someone who was on the Washington beat in 2019 when Josh Johnson came in and finished that season, I cannot believe Josh Johnson is still in the league playing for yet another team. I think he's played for all of them. That'd actually be fun. Can he try to play for every single team? He's going to need a couple midseason trades. But
he's close. He's
closer than he should be.
Because how old is he? How old is Josh Johnson?
I don't know. Here, we're going to look this up. This is always my favorite radio, but we're going to look this up because
he's
the
37.
world deserves to know. He's 37.
That's older than I thought.
And that's the thing. He was like in his 30s when he showed up and Jay Gruden was like, I don't know, we're going to let Josh run around in 2019. And he's played for literally 14 NFL teams.
Wow. Even if he gets half, even if we can get just 2 more in his career, that'd be great. Get half, to say that he played for half the league, because at that point, you got to think of the man cave, right? You have your name on a game-worn jersey for 16 different teams.
Well, and that doesn't count the other leagues he's played in. Like, I don't know what league the Sacramento Mountain Lions are in. Apparently an American football, it's the American football team based in Sacramento, United Football League. But he played for him in 2012. He also played for the Los Angeles Wildcats. Who can forget of the kind of original XFL 2.0? If the current one's 3.0 and the one with He Hate Me back in the day was 1.0. He played the San Diego Fleet in the Alliance. Remember the Alliance?
Oh yeah, I forgot he was in that league.
So he's played for like 17 teams, 14 NFL teams, and counting. Clearly, if there's one of those two guys gets midseason traded, it's going to be Josh Johnson, because that's what happens to Josh Johnson.
This is a work of art. This whole... He's played for the Niners 4 times. 2012, 2014, 2020, and then 2022. He's played for the Niners.
I think on your show, I was going to do this to you, but I decided that we didn't really have the time to do it properly. You on your show, just randomly, you should just quiz your co-host and be like, did Josh Johnson play for this team?
Oh, that's actually a great bit. That's a great bit. If we start that bit, I will give you full credit for it, but this is a great bit.
Excellent. That's all I need. All right. If you need me to come guest host it, I will buy a tiny microphone off Amazon and plug it in and everything. On what's today? Thursday. Holy crap, we made it to Thursday. It's the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. And we're gonna do something we don't do super often on this show to start today. We're gonna open it up to calls pretty quickly because I have an interesting thought exercise on how we want to, how we want to spend the off day. Obviously, 2 joint practices. Got practice tomorrow, practice Saturday, game on Monday, the whole deal. But I was listening. I will admit I got this idea sparked. Thanks, Cakes, from John Kimes' podcast that he did with Nikki Jabvala. And they were talking about a couple of Commanders players, and they were, whoa, if that guy's out, like, he'd be really hard to replace. And it got me to thinking. Who actually are the most irreplaceable Washington Commanders? Here's why this is a fun thought exercise. It's not who's the best player, right? Because if you lose Terry McLaurin, you're not dead. Like, Jahan Dotson still exists, and you would obviously lose a lot. But when you think about, like, irreplaceable, you're talking about depth and the actual player themselves. How much does it affect the team, and what is the depth ultimately behind them? And because I think this is the deepest Commanders team that Ron has had, it becomes really, really interesting to say who is the most irreplaceable and not, because at a lot of positions, I think that there are duplicate skill sets. So Let's go ahead and do it. Let's open up phones. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. And I got some tweets already as well. So we'll get to those at Craig Hoffman. And I had a couple of guys already say the guy that I think is the number one most irreplaceable Washington Commander. And it's not any of the Pro Bowlers. It's not the max paid guys. It's one of the guys who's trying to get paid. So to Cam Curl's agent, you're welcome for the segment. But we saw last year how hard hit this defense was when Curl was out. Their production tanked when he was not out there. Now, I will say, part of that was the games that Curl was gone overlapped with a lot of the games that William Jackson III was in, and clearly removing Jackson from the defense, a defense that despite his success in Cincinnati, he did not fit well in and could not perform well in. You remove him, things got a lot better. But don't get it twisted. Curl's return did give them a boost even before Jackson was ultimately cut, but before he was even removed from the lineup. So I guess he was traded. It was traded at the deadline. He was not cut, if I'm remembering correctly. So to me, I would say Cam Curl is the number one guy. And again, your calls, we'll get a couple of these in. 301-230-0980s. We got some folks already hitting up the phone lines. So so then you get to like, okay, why Curl over McLaurin, Allen, whatever. Like, even if they were all the same, I think the safety position is actually pretty deep here. But Curl fits such a unique mold of the guy that gives you the versatility to go Buffalo nickel, play him in the post. He plays underneath well. He plays over the top well. And he's also your best man-to-man guy against tight ends, unless Quan Martin turns out to have that as a skill set that is fairly high level, which we just haven't seen yet. So the way in which I'm wrong about this is actually not Curl's not as good as we think he is. It's that Quan Martin, and I'm not just saying this because Quan had a rough first game, but that Quan Martin is way better than we think he is right now. I think Quan Martin will be a very good football player. He's a second-round pick. But right now, he doesn't have the depth of experience. So while Percy Butler, I think, has had a fantastic camp, while Jeremy Reeves has had a fantastic camp, Neither of those guys are Cam Curl, and I think the drop-off would be significant. So Curl is my answer. There's a couple of other guys that I thought were floating around that were interesting, and we'll get to them. I want to let you guys chime in first. I don't just want to name a bunch of guys and then be like, oh, well, he took my guy, so what's the point? So let's go. 301-230-0980. Tweets at Craig Hoffman. Shoot, I'll even pull up the YouTube chat in a second and see if anybody's chiming in there. But let's start on the Ace Law listener line. As we go to the Ace Law listener line, in a rec, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Let's go to JT in DC. JT, go ahead. You're on the Hoffman Show. I see who you have. The call screener has written it down, but try to convince me that it's the punter.
I'm going to convince you. Hey, Craig, I'm going to convince you it's the punter because we only have a handful of Pro Bowlers. One, I got a feeling that this is going to be a year where we're going to be in a lot of close games, right? Our defense is going to keep us in a lot of ball games. We have a young QB. I think we're going to need – this is a field position season for us, and we can't find another Pro Bowl punter on the open market, the free agent market. You're not going to trade for that. You're not going to get that anywhere else. And with a close ball game, I think field position is going to be key for us this year, and that's really it.
So, JT, you bring up excellent points. You have not convinced me that it's Tress just because of the value of the position. If you can get another guy that comes in and punts well, that just has such a little effect on game compared to a guy like a Cam Curl, let's say. But I think it's an interesting thought, and you do bring up a good point. That it is going to be a very the games will be won so on the margins this year that I think if you lose Tress Way and go to someone who's mediocre, that could cost you a game here or there. So I hear you. Sorry, JT, we really just stepped on each other's toes there at the end, but appreciate the call. 301-230-0980. I mean, it's an interesting thought exercise because you pin a team inside the 20 versus it's a touchback, something that Tress does exceptionally well. Okay, it's a point. I just don't know if it's enough to overcome the down in, down out of an offensive or defensive player. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. I got a bunch of tweets, so I will go through them next, as well as more of your calls on the Ace Law listener line. Bunch of good tweets. They're still coming in now, and some guys who have not been mentioned yet. More on the tweets. Also, this one from Mike G says, "Whoever you mention will be hurt by week 2, so pick accordingly." I'm so sorry to Cam Curl. I started about this saying you're welcome to Cam Curl's agent. I'm so sorry to Cam Curl if that's the case. But we certainly hope to not be cursing anybody. I don't think we have any show curses, so I would say that's a positive. 301-230-0980. More of your calls next. Plus, coming up later on in the show, Commanders business starting to boom again. AJ Perez joins us to talk about it at 5 o'clock. And a little Wizards in the show? A little Wizards in the show. NBA schedule came out. 6 o'clock. We will talk about it here on The Hoffman Show.
You can take the Team 980.
Tried to warn you, bro. It is a mess in downtown Nashville every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Not even
we moved hotels the next night. I still am waiting on my refund for that. But yeah, we moved hotels the second night.
Wow.
It was fun. You say they rely on them. We went to brunch with my buddy the next day, who is a Nashville native and has lived in Nashville long enough that he remembers when it was more than just the bachelorette capital of the world. And he's like, yeah, we're pretty much on the woo girl economy.
Yeah, that's precisely what's going on. The downtown businesses cater to that. If you try to get it shut down, you're probably the one getting thrown out. That is what it is right now. It's weird, but Nashville, baby. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So I will add one more small part to this story, and this is the part, frankly, that I've been waiting to tell you all week as well. That was kind of part one. We got quality Yates reaction. Part two, as we leave the hotel the next morning to go to breakfast. Remember, the wall's very thin. So it's not going where you think it's going. But as we walk down the hallway, my dear sweet wife just starts saying in a slightly elevated volume of voice, it's been proven that the later groups stay out and make noise and all this stuff at their bachelorette weekend, the higher the divorce rate.
Oh God!
In the wedding,
So
and also the better
trash,
chances,
basically.
and also the better chances.
Wow. Okay. Okie dokie. So Rachel was pissed, basically.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of tolerance for the Woo girls. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. On Twitter, at Craig Hoffman. I will not call it whatever this silly new thing that we're trying to call it is. It's Twitter. You know where to go. Same place we've been going for years. On Threads, I will check my Threads account as well on occasion, at Craig_Hoffman, actually with frequency. So if you want to hit us there with your most irreplaceable commanders, that is the question. At 301-230-0980. Phone calls are the most welcome. That's how you cheat. That's how you get to the front of the line. 301-230-0980. That the Ace Law listener line. In a wreck, Ace helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. So a couple of guys that have been mentioned. My guy is Cam Curl. But obviously the most common answers were, as Marshall says, 17 and 93. McLaurin, Allen, the two most productive and respected players on the roster, the emotional leaders of their units that hold everyone else accountable. I think that's an interesting spin on it because it's not just about, it obviously depends on the injury. Like, is this a season ending out for the year type of thing? Or if you lose one of these guys and they're not around the team anymore, like that seems a much bigger deal, not just because of their football abilities, but their presence being gone versus, you miss him for a couple weeks, but he's around, he's at the facility, he's on the side field, he's on the sideline in practice. That like bigness to their contributions, I think is an interesting case for those two guys. With that said, so I have a hard time saying Terry because of Jahan. Now, would Jahan's life become way harder if Terry was out? Yes. And if I'm making a top 5 list, is Terry on it? Probably. Maybe that's where this segment will end up, is a top 5 list. And we'll try to parse it out. But I'm taking all nominations at 301-230-0980. McLaurin is great. He's my favorite player I've covered since my time, here in 2015 started and the whole deal. But Dotson might lead this team in receiving this year. He's that good. And this offense benefits him well. I think Bieniemy understands how to get playmakers the ball. I think Curtis Samuel's reps would his touches would go up dramatically. And while there would be a drop-off, there's a lot of talent in that receiving room. And you still have a guy like a De'Ami Brown who's had a good camp and has a great rapport with Sam Howell that can do some of the deep stuff that Terry does. And again, it would be a huge loss. But I don't think you're stuck in the way you are if Curl is gone. Allen, kind of the same thing, depending on the health behind him. And that's the funky part of this is, like, okay, right now, if they lost Allen with Big Phil being out and proving to be unreliable from an injury standpoint so far, I feel bad. He got unlucky last year and, whatever happened with the calf this year. But at the end of the day, like, you do need guys to play in that three technique position. And that you don't have, like, a primo backup option. I think Allen would probably also make my top 5 list. But they are experimenting with James Smith-Williams there. They are experimenting with F.A. Obata there. They can do some different things with different personnel and looks. I mean, Chase has been playing a little bit of 3-tech. Like, they have options there that don't leave you dead in the way that I think if Curl is out, you have to fundamentally change your defense. Like, you can still play Cinco with Allen out. You still are going to be really nasty inside because Payne is so good if Allen is out. If Curl is out, you fundamentally change who you are. Other contributions. Howell. Incorrect answer. Just straight up, this might ruffle some feathers. Straight up, not the correct answer to the question. If Sam Howell is out, you are both not screwed short-term and not screwed long-term. It is unfortunate. It would be bad because you want to figure out if he's the guy long-term, and you can't figure out if he's the guy if he's not playing. But the level drop between Howell and Brissett is really not that much, if there's any at all. And on any given week, stylistically, experience-wise, whatever, Jacoby might actually be the better option. If you were literally going to go through the schedule week by week and say, okay, the strengths that you need out of a quarterback this particular week match up this particular way, there's going to be some weeks that Jacoby ticks more boxes than Sam. It just is. And so while there are bigger ramifications if Howell were to miss time, and you are setting yourself up for a really murky, funky, unclear future, Sam Howell for 2023 is about as far down the list as you can go of starting players because his backup is just as good as him. This is interesting. Someone says, I'm going to say Jahan Dotson. Dude just knows how to get into the end zone. Terry is great, but I honestly feel Dotson will be better. He just needs to stay healthy. That's interesting because I do think he has a slick route running ability that is pretty essential to this offense that fits well with this offense that will not, like, would be missed tremendously and would pull their production down in a major way if he was gone. However, they would just force feed Terry the ball, and there are worse things you can do to force feed Terry. So I can't, like, I would rather, if I had to pick one, lose Jahan than Terry. And that also goes to the leadership, kind of intangible things that he brings to the field. The toughness, not to mention the tangible things, his speed, his physicality, his contested catch ability, the confidence that he brings to the huddle. Like, there's just so much stuff with him. But I do think, like, you talk about major drop-offs, like, who are the best players on the team? Like, yeah, Jahan's right there. No Followers says, number 1, John Allen, the heart and soul of the defense. I can handle Brissett coming in for Howell. Receiving core is solid. Secondary is solid. Can handle if Cam is going down. Again, that's my answer. Number 2, Cosme for obvious reasons. So this gets to the kind of the core of the question. We're not asking about who the best players are. We're asking who would be the most painful, who are the most irreplaceable players. And so if you lose Sam Cosme, who's the backup right guard? Like, a lot of y'all are going, wait, I don't even know. I guess it would be whoever you want to slide over that doesn't win the left guard job. Chris Paul, Sadiq Charles. But right now, Sadiq can't stay on the field at left guard. So you're already thin there. And then behind them, they're trying Ricky Stromberg over there. They're trying Tyler Larson over there. Or would you put one of those guys, maybe Larson at center, and slide Gates over to guard? Well, you brought him in to be your starting center. I think the answers are along the offensive line. And perhaps one spot over. DePaul Nibber says, DePaul in Maryland, Charles Leno hands down. The only reason I won't say it's Leno is because Cornelius Lucas has actually been pretty good as a swing tackle. But if, God forbid, he goes down, now really, if any of them go down, you're on super thin ice. I think guard is the position you can least afford to lose someone, then tackle, then center along the offensive line, where the way this roster is built. But the player that sparked this conversation for me, the one that they were talking about on that Nikki and John were talking about on Keim's podcast, that to me said, whoa, this is an interesting thought exercise, is Logan Thomas, which you'll note is a problem because Logan Thomas hasn't practiced in 2 weeks and won't until at least next week after this Baltimore game. They don't have anyone else like him. If you look at the combination of catch and block, Logan Thomas is one of one on this roster. And in an offense that is incredibly tight end dependent, at least the version of it that was in Kansas City was, that seems like a pretty significant tightrope to be walking. You don't want to dictate your personnel based off what you're about to call, because that is a dead giveaway to the defense. Hey, we're going to run it. Get Bates in there. Okay, cool. We're going to pass it. Get Cole Turner in there. Okay, cool. You don't want to live like that. You want some variety. And while, yes, Bates can run routes and catch and is effective, it is a limited effectiveness. It's with certain things, and he's not dynamic or explosive. While Cole Turner can block, you don't want to leave him on the same islands you're willing to leave Bates. Or give him the assignments that you're willing to give Bates, or, more importantly, for the purpose of this conversation, Logan Thomas, where you say, hey, man, you got the key block on this run play, or, hey, we're going play action. We're going to leave you in on max protect. You're going to have to block a defensive end. John Bates does that stuff, and he does it better than most tight ends do in the league. He's really good at it. Logan is very complimentary of him, and Logan would know because that was Logan's job for 10 years in the NFL. I trust his eye on that particular thing. So Thomas, you can do that stuff. Bates is the better blocker. Turner's the better receiver, but he's, I don't even know if he's a better receiver. Probably by a little bit, but Thomas is really good at both. Not the world's best blocker, but a lot better than Cole Turner at this stage in Cole Turner's life and career. So I happen to think that the best or that the most irreplaceable guy, and to a lot of your credit, you who called in and screamed about the tight end position in the offseason, this is something that they chose to go down this path. They chose to rely on a guy in Logan Thomas to be healthy, who has not been healthy in a couple of years, obviously with the big injury. And sure enough, he's got an injury that's lingered here, as Ron loves to say, an older player who you just don't know how he's going to heal. To their credit, to the Commanders' front office's credit, the Armani Rogers injury looms large here. They were probably fine if they had Rogers, but they didn't do anything. And in part, they couldn't. It was after the draft. There's only so much they could do, but they didn't even try to do anything after Rodgers went down. And that leaves them on very, very thin ice at tight end. Just got another tweet saying Cole Turner might actually be the answer. I don't know about that, but a dynamic playmaking tight end, if he goes down, it's all on Logan Thomas, and that's a place you don't want to be in. So if I had to make my top 5 list, I would say Thomas at 1. Actually, I might put Cosme at 1. That's a really good tweet. I think it'd be Cosme at 1. Thomas second. Is there someone? Oh, Curl third. because I do really like Percy Butler. Obviously, they've got Quan. I like Derek Forrest, Jeremy Reeves. Like, they've just got so many DBs, even if I think that is the biggest one on defense. Then McLaurin, then Allen. That would be my 5. Qualms, additions, proposals, 301-230-0980. We'll continue to talk about this and other Commanders news. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are also streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Thanks for all the tweets on the most irreplaceable Commanders. I don't know. Paul tweeted back in after saying Charles Leno is his guy. Cosme goes down. Wiley moves inside. Lucas takes over right tackle. Lucas is not athletic enough for left tackle. He's played left tackle before, so sorry, but you're wrong. Also, I was thinking about a rant today, and you want to know what? I'm in the mood. We're gonna go for it. This is an unplanned rant. It's one I was trying to keep in my back pocket. It's tangentially related to what Paul just said. But I'm just going to go for it. Andrew Wiley is not moving inside. And fans do not know better than coaches. That doesn't mean coaches are always right, but you do not have all the data. Eric Bieniemy has been the offensive coordinator in Kansas City and been to 3 Super Bowls with Andrew Wiley. Why do you think that he is going... And by the way, he brought Andrew Wiley here to play right tackle. He's not moving inside. He's not a guard. Even if you might be right that he could be better at guard. He's not a guard. They didn't pay him to be a guard. Stop doing silly fan things, which gets me to the real thing of my rant, which is I do not understand. I promise this is going to end in a happy place, so bear with me through the ranting anger. I do not get why some of y'all like sports. I truly don't understand it at all. Because some of the comments that I read through on, and look, social media is a cesspool. Blah, blah, blah. Social media is people. Social media is fans. Social media is the same calls that we've been getting in sports radio for 30 years put into a tweet or a YouTube comment or whatever. These are real people with real opinions who think these things. And I truly do not understand how some of y'all like sports, because it seems like your entire sports fan existence is miserable. You always want everyone fired, everyone traded, and I truly do not understand how you live that way. Sports are supposed to be fun. Sports are, there are serious parts to it. These are people's livelihoods. There's multi-billion-dollar businesses. And the competition matters. That's cool. I get that it matters. But the flippancy with which you just want to trade Chase Young. It's August, at the time I read this comment, 15th. They're not trading Chase Young. What are you talking about? Ron Rivera should be fired. EB should be the head coach. When was the last time an NFL head coach got fired in August? I mean this sincerely. If that's all you think about all day is the coach getting fired, why are you here? What part of this is fun for you? I don't get it. And I get passion. The whole reason I have a job is the passion of sports fans, because we have created this industry where we come together and talk about it, which is ultimately what I would like to do here. But for me, I love sports because I actually respect the expertise of the people doing it, and in terms of the coaches. And the players I respect because I, as someone who loves playing sports, would love to have that amount of athleticism for a day. If I could be Russell Westbrook, if I've always said this, if I could pick one dude for a day, which is a really fun June topic, by the way. Maybe we'll do it next year. If you could be one athlete for one day, forget their career, so that gets into accolades and whatever. If you could be one athlete for one day and get to do the stuff that guy does for one day, I think my athlete would be Russell Westbrook, because I want to angry dunk on someone so bad for once in my life. I am limited by my height and my genetics to never have been able to dunk on a 10-foot rim. It sucks. Hate it. Russell Westbrook looks like he's going to break the rim every time he dunks it. I want to do that one time on another NBA player. That would be so awesome. And I have so much respect, and I'm in such awe of these athletes. Weird sidebar, didn't think it would go here. I'm watching Break Point right now on Netflix, which is the tennis documentary that's similar to Drive to Survive. Same producers and everything from the F1 series, Netflix sports documentary. And when you watch this show, they shoot it with these incredible cinematic 4K cameras, and you see the athleticism of these players, and you just go, I wish I could do that. And what I do not understand is segments of sports fans in general. I'm not even going to single out the Washington fan base. And the Commanders fan base has been through a lot. I get cynicism. I understand that. There are reasons for it. It has been built up and plaque on your teeth because you didn't go to the dentist for years and you had a giant cavity and his name was Dan Snyder. And another one back there that they finally extracted. named Bruce Allen, and that was painful and it sucked. But I truly do not understand the section of sports fans who exist solely for the transaction market and for the let's fire someone at all times, nothing is ever good enough. And if, God forbid, your team wins a championship, then how do we repeat and win too? And if you don't, then the coach still sucks. And there's another group of people, and this I will throw more into the sports media, and I will just directly say, like, it's the Skip Bayless effect of people that are so entrenched in their opinions that they do not, like, no matter how much evidence is presented to them, they will never change. And the only reason that you can do that is because the athletes that are playing are human beings, and if you say LeBron James isn't that good, eventually he'll be 52 and you'll be right. Now, he might be the greatest player of all time in the entire 30 years that you've been wrong, but like The Athletic just released their player tier rankings, and LeBron James is second. Finally, he's in the second tier for the first time since he was basically a rookie. The Athletic didn't exist, but it would have been the first time. You want to know who else is second tier? Jimmy Butler, who half the people, tons of NBA fans, Anthony included, saying like he's the best playoff player in the league. LeBron has fallen to Jimmy Butler status. And you got people like Skip Bayless who have made it a career out of being like, he's not that good. I just don't get it. To me, sports are fun. Sports are a way to marvel at the things that we wish we could do. Sports are a way to marvel at the genius of people who have dedicated their lives to the craft, both in terms of players and crafting their technique and their abilities and all that kind of stuff, but also the coaches who have completely dedicated their lives to the strategy and trying to innovate and finding these little tweaks along the margins to win the game that they've never won before, advance to the round they've never won before. And I swear to God, the loudest people on the internet just want to fire them all at all times and then suggest that Andrew Wiley should go play guard. I do not understand where the joy is in that. And now that I've gotten my anger out, I would actually genuinely like to know. We take more calls. AJ Perez is going to join us at 5 o'clock. But in the meantime, 301-230-0980. Why do you love sports? Like, I've seen enough of these comments. I've seen enough of these tweets. I've seen enough of these whatever. Why do you love it? Take some calls if you want to. If not, we'll go back to the Sam Howell thing that I had planned in the segment before I completely lost it based off a tweet that suggested Andrew Wiley should play guard. That's next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I guess that's why we have the segment Never Read the Comments, and maybe we just were reminded why that occasionally it's going to cause me to lose my ever-loving mind. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. AJ Perez at the top of the hour. Take Command coming at 5:30. Logan and I went deep on the joint practices. We potted for over an hour this morning. We will give you the offensive breakdown here on the radio coming up at 5:30. Right now, though, back to some calls, 301-230-0980. I just asked a simple question. Why is it that you love sports? I like it because I love competition. I love watching people do things that I wish I could do that I can't. Same reason you go to concerts, right? Like, I wish I could sing like that. I wish I could dance like that. I wish I had any musical talent whatsoever with any fiber of my being. Instead, I speak for a living unrhythmically into a microphone about sports. It is what it is. So I go to concerts. I'm like, that is awesome. But obviously, other people like them for different reasons and enjoy different parts of sports. And that's fine. This is not meant to shame anybody, despite my rant. It's meant to seek understanding. So a little crowdsourcing. 301-230-0980, the Ace Law listener line. In a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Let's go to Vaughn. Vaughn, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how you doing?
I'm good.
Just to give a different perspective here, and we're going to keep it specific to football here. You might have a different appreciation for it because you get to see it from an analytical approach, right? You got to realize that some people grew up in this town. They're born fans. They want winners. So when they say fire somebody, they're tired of seeing losers. They're tired of year after year. Okay, for instance, the Wiley situation you just mentioned. We knew the line was some trash last year. If you bring in and you see the same thing this year, what do you think the first inclination is as a passionate fan from this area who keeps seeing losers? You're going to think, replace this guy with somebody who can get the job done. You're looking at it from an analytical approach, though, because you get to see this stuff from the inside. Keep in mind you have a different view than most fans.
No, Vaughn, I hear you. I hear you on that. And look, I want winning too. Trust me. Covering winning is way more fun than covering losing. Covering losing stinks. Everyone's mad all the time, and I hate it so much. And think of the joy. And I'll even peel back the curtain to this. Our numbers from the week of the sale, the most joy this town has felt about football in decades, our numbers were crazy. Like crazy. And by crazy, I mean crazy good, just to be exceptionally clear. We are better in business, and we are better as human beings when this team is winning. So we also want to win. I think, Vaughn, what I get frustrated is not when you're like, fire the coach and it's December and they're 3-12, and it's like, okay, are they going to finish 4-13 or 3-14? Like, yeah, at that point, see ya. Like, I was not shy about, hey, it's time to move on from Scott Turner at the end of last year. What I think gets under my skin is people who want to fire coaches, like a head coach in the middle of August, so that they can elevate the offensive coordinator. And it's like, Ron can work in the front office now, but like it's time for Bieniemy to be the head coach. I'm like, what planet do you live on?
I agree with you there.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm talking about.
I think when we're talking about stuff in preseason, I don't take that seriously, but I think it's just the fatigue of the same old here. We know at the end of the season, most likely we'll be between 7 and 9 wins, and I think you'll get the same frustrated fans that we're an average ball club under Ron and they want change. I think that's what is more so about right now.
100%. And look, I don't disagree with that, and that means we're going to have the conversation. And I hate those conversations. I'm not saying there's some people that enjoy them, but I hate those conversations because we're talking about human beings. But at the end of the day, the job's the job. Like, it comes to a point where it's like, look, man, the job was to do better than this, and you didn't do it. My job's to talk about it, nothing personal. So I get that, Vaughn. I appreciate the call. But I like when you're talking about doing all this crazy, like, it's almost fan fiction, like management stuff in the middle of August or rearranging things in a way that coaches never would. Like, it's just not worth the time. So why go yelling it on the internet to try to get it? I mean, some people just want attention. I don't know. Let's go to Disco and Laurel. Disco, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how you doing, man? I enjoy your stuff interacting with you on Twitter, man. So
you too,
thank
bro.
you. I think you're spot on, Craig. Let me make a couple of points. I think one thing this fan base should learn, if you look at it in totality, is that firing coaches every 2 to 3 to 4 years has not worked. Now, I'm not saying that gives you a pass to go 4-12 or 5-11 or whatever, how many games we have, but it just hasn't worked. The other thing, so we need to look at that very clearly. The other thing is this. When Ron got criticized about saying the stuff about Eric Bieniemy, coaches say dumb stuff. Most, if not all of them do.
Can confirm.
Jay Gruden eviscerated Robert Griffin III in the media. Mike Shanahan told us that Donovan McNabb had cardiovascular issue. I mean, but cardio issue. Coaches say dumb things. So it doesn't mean that every time they say something dumb or does something dumb, it means that you get fired. Because you know what? You'll never be good. Now, that does not say that there should not be accountability. But here's one last point, Craig. Mm-hmm. If you really, truly – Ron Rivera's record speaks for itself, and he will be held accountable. But to your point about Joy, he's the coach until he's not. So I watch the game, Craig, because I'm waiting for the next great play from my team. I'm crossing my fingers that Sam Howell is the guy. That's why I watch sports with the eternal optimism of a fan. That is why I don't watch it thinking, oh, he did this, let's fire the coach. I don't do that.
Disco, I appreciate that call a lot. Thank you, because it brings up a couple of really, really good points on a couple of different fronts. One, Logan has often said it's really Kyle Shanahan said it. Logan got this from Kyle. Like, Kyle thinks it takes 3 years to really learn a system. Like, if you want to know it like the back of your hand, it doesn't matter how smart you are as a player. Like, if you really want to understand it, not just like know your assignment, but understand the why and be able to make the expert level adjustments because you understand the why and you understand the rules of why you're doing a certain thing, and thus you know when to break them. Like, that level of nuance, it takes 3 years to get there in the NFL. So if you fire your coach every 4, you never get a chance to build. Because if you spend the first 2 years turning over your roster, the guys you get in years 3 and 4, they're not ever getting to that third year in the same system. And often, if you're struggling and you're firing your coach every 4 years, and remember, there's one coach in this entire Snyder era that got to a second contract, and it was Gruden. And it was signed in a rush in a bar in Indianapolis for completely non-football reasons. So if you're having those struggles, right, that mean you're going to be gone after year 4, you probably didn't keep all your coordinators. Like, the head coach is never the first one to go. Other people have gone too. And when you change coordinators, you typically change systems. And so there is a power to continuity that, from just a pure strategic standpoint, the fire the coach crowd is missing. Again, that's not to say that, like Disco said, just an excuse for poor performance at all times. Oh, we got to keep it. No, I think that's what good leadership is. Good leadership is realizing when there's a sunk cost and moving on versus, no, this is worth fixing. But I'd also ask on a sheerly human level, like, is every time you screw up at work, are you scared you're going to get fired? Do you get fired? It depends. If you're a doctor and you misspell a patient's name on a chart, like, that's going to be really annoying. And it could actually cause some consequences of they can't find your file. And, like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, could happen. I don't know how hospital systems work. That probably was just very clear to someone who works in a hospital system, right? But that's not a fireable offense, writing something down and spelling it wrong in a chart, right? If you botch a surgery, that's a different, that could potentially be a fireable offense. Yeah, if you mess up the surgery and the patient dies, like, yeah, malpractice, goodbye, and you deserve to go, good riddance, please be gone. So there is a different, like, not every mistake is created equal. Not every misstep, not even mistake
mission that doesn't go successfully accomplished. It's the NFL. This is hard. And so I'm with Disco. I like to consume sports through an eternal optimism. And there's a reality to that, and this is where my analytical hat does go on. I always said that as long as Dan Snyder was here, when he was here, that there was going to be a cap on the success of this team. And it wasn't because he was a bad dude. Directly, that contributed to the fact that there was incompetence and he had a hard time hiring and keeping good people. And when that is limited, you're obviously going to have institutional failures over time. But on any given Sunday and in any given year, could the right amount of talent come together and do something? Like in 2015 when they caught fire with Cousins and make the playoffs, or 2012 with Robert, or any of the other times they made the playoffs? Sure. It just wasn't going to be sustainable because they were going to mess it up. And so that optimism, I mean, the NFL is the king of this because you're on this weekly cycle whereby this used to happen to me every week on the beat, is they would get their ass kicked on Sunday, and you look ahead and you'd be like, that team just beat the ass of another team. They're coming here now. This team's about to get murdered. And then you'd start to talk to the coaches. You talk to the players. You'd have a little bit of time for your emotions to come down. And by Friday, you'd be like, I think they're going to win this weekend. That's the beauty of the NFL. That, to me, is the beauty of being a sports fan and watching sports. And so if you spend all your time just trying to move on to the next thing, you look back and for what? All the time is gone. Not to be existential about it, but like, do you want to, do you rather wish it be better right now or wish it, just keep wishing for some fantasy time in the future that may never come? I like to say, hey, what's realistic right now? How can this be better right now? That's how I analyze. That's how I watch sports. That's how I'm a fan of sports. And to me, that's the most enjoyable. Everyone comes into it a little bit differently, and there's no shame in any of that. I just think obviously, I think, because otherwise I would do it a different way, the way that I approach this is healthier, let's say, than just looking to fire someone, trying to find the mistake all the time versus looking to give people credit, looking to appreciate the brilliance of the things that we see week in and week out on fields, courts, rinks, etc., across the country and across the world. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks to everyone who called in on the Ace Law listener line. Again, Ace Law helps you get a check. If you are in a wreck, call 8888 Ace Law. When we get back, AJ Perez joins us here on the Hoffman Show talking Commanders business. They're back in business, making money. It's Not My Beat next.
Hey, I'm Craig Hoffman.
It is the Hoffman Show, Hour 2 here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Still to come on the show today, Take Command. Logan Paulson's thoughts on the joint practices in Baltimore at the bottom of the hour at 5:30. Bottom of the next hour, 6:30. Steven Goff from the Washington Post, a little soccer talk here on the show. And the NBA schedule came out to that at 6 o'clock. But right now, time for the top story of the day. AJ Perez going to join us for Not My Beat. And the top story today is this. The Commanders are back open for business. Anheuser-Busch back with the Commanders. Verizon signed with them yesterday. Some of the sponsorships that dried up during the Dan Snyder era are being replenished. So let's get more detail. Let's do it.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not. Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Joining us to discuss more, AJ Perez, Front Office Sports. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see live from his gym, which makes my heart warm as a fellow fitness junkie. AJ, appreciate you and your time as always. So it's been an interesting couple of days here on the business side of things for the Commanders. They get some new sponsors. And is this something that you think has been building for a while? Like, is there a queue that they just have to file a bunch of paperwork for a bunch of sponsors now that Josh Harris is in place? Like, what can you tell us about the big picture of what it means to be the Commanders in business right now?
Yeah, the Verizon one, it's kind of not a big surprise since they are a league partner. Same with Anheuser-Busch, with Bud Light coming back as the official beer sponsor that we found out today. So these are either relationships that the league has, or in the case of Bud Light that the team had before. And obviously, March 2022, they pulled the ripcord there and got out of it. That was kind of at the height of Dan Snyder's scandal plagued, I guess, last couple of years.
Yeah. So, is this a reflection of work that has been done by Jason Wright and his team, or is this the league, having the relationships and them just making a phone call? I guess what I'm trying to get at here is this groundwork that has been laid, or is this just they closed a door, nobody moved from either side of the door, and now they open the door again?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think Jason Wright and also just the whole change of ownership. I think over the last 3-4 weeks after the NFL owners voted to approve Harris's group, I think there's things that there's big companies, there are going to be others too that were kind of in the pipeline, that wanted to come back or waiting. And obviously this is going to be a multi-year process of kind of getting these local revenues back up to where they were back, at least not the dollar amount, but the percentage of what they were taking in, going back to, and there's companies that are around now that weren't around in 1999 when Dan Snyder bought the team. So there's going to be a lot of new categories, and we're going to see probably a lot of returning sponsors. And there's really the only thing that could stop that would be a name change to a certain name that the team used to have, maybe. But that's the only thing that's going to stop this whole thing from really ramping up.
Yeah, that is a can of worms or a can of beer that I do not want to open right now, so we're just going to keep it moving. AJ Perez, Front Office Sports, with us here on the Hoffman Show. AJ, what do you know about kind of where this team is financially in terms of the local revenue, the types of sponsors they have? What's the picture that they're painting with and some of the blank spaces on it compared to most NFL teams?
Yeah, so they're pretty far down there. They were, we got some kind of, I reported earlier this year that they were kind of among the last, which is we're in a DMA size 9 market, nationwide, the 9th biggest market. And the revenues for the Commanders matched a DMA of 40 or below. I mean, it wasn't great. That a lot of that was, the investigations, and partially the losses. I think the inability to be a playoff contender year over year was a factor. And obviously all the drama, which also spilled over into the stadium search, was also part of it. So you look at those two things, and we don't know if they're going to win yet, but we know we have 21 new owners coming in. So there's definitely some kind of there's at least this is the kind of the feel good period. Now will that carry into the season? I mean, for a large part of it, for the business part of it, it will. I mean, now it's the other part of it's going to be, will the team be successful? And that's how you attract even more sponsors.
Well, I mean, the winning is one part, but there's also the incompetence, right? Like dealing with this franchise was terrible. I've talked about it from like a media relations standpoint and some of the things that occasionally would pop up there. But like how quickly have they been able to flush out and change? And even, although this drives people nuts, if you say anything nice about Jason Wright, and again, Jason's not perfect. He's done things that, I think a lot of us would be like, that wasn't great. But how much of this is groundwork that has been laid leading to the big move that kind of removes the seal that allows that makes people feel good about signing the deal, but like the infrastructure within the business side of the team to actually be a good partner in a business relationship?
Yeah, I think we don't know how many deals were kind of just on hold because of Dan Snyder. I mean, there was probably a lot of companies who wanted to, they're the local team, NFL team, and they have a region, maybe somewhere else in the nation that has an NFL team, and they have a deal with them, but they just weren't getting it together with the team as is before Dan Snyder obviously sold. That they kind of held back, and it's like companies don't want friction. They don't want negative headlines. They don't want to be targeted of a boycott. Obviously, the Boycott Dan website, which is now dead. I checked the other day. It's gone. So even though we're still the economy is still weird, and the economy hasn't really. It's kind of isn't surging quite yet. And a lot of advertising has been pulled back for either in media and sponsorships for teams and such. So this is going to be, they're coming at an odd time in the economy, but also, this is where they're going to start wrapping up, and we're going to see more and more. Someone asked me yesterday about a beer sponsor, and I'm like, I don't know where that stands. I'll have one pretty soon, but we didn't know it was the next day. I mean, they were going to see other deals come about, and some deals are more complex than this one. I mean, this is a beer sponsor. They've been there before. They obviously have several other NFL teams and across sports. This is not new for Bud Light, but it's or InBev, Anheuser-Busch, their parent companies. But it's there's going to be. I'm sure they're chasing other big deals, and the next one, which they're all gearing up for, the one we have to watch out for, is the stadium title sponsor for the new stadium. That's going to be probably record breaking. They're going to try to match SoFi, I'm sure, over in LA. That's going to be a major thing, and that's why this is all important, because this is where you set up for that next deal. And that next deal, there's going to be many other next deals, but the big next deal is the whole title sponsor for a new stadium.
That obviously won't come till they there's no way they sell that before there's a site and a plan and all that stuff. Right?
Sometimes they have we learned Highmark and Highmark status with the Buffalo State about a year before they broke ground. But it's going to be closer to they have a site. They haven't broken ground yet. There's the environmental impact reports and all the other local regulatory stuff is kind of still happening. But that's when they can announce. But yeah, it's usually closer to the stadium, at least starting construction.
I'm going to go off script here for a second, AJ, and I hope I don't leave your area of expertise, but you're very smart and you cover sports business. So I'm assuming you're also, for those that don't know, you work for a national outlet, but you live in Ashburn. You're a local guy. So I'm assuming you understand the mechanics of this a little bit better than most people that I might just randomly ask this question. Long setup. Here's the question. How different is the stadium site battle here compared to other stadium site battles? Because unlike, we had an expert on who would use the example of Cobb County, Georgia, and really you're just moving money around, and people that would go out to dinner, for instance, in the area around the stadium would have gone out to dinner anyway. Well, if those people would have gone out to dinner in Virginia and said they go out in Maryland or in D.C., now the jurisdiction that has the stadium is actually bringing in money in a different way. So how unique is the battle here for the stadium, because there's 3 state-level different jurisdictions that would be getting the revenue that comes with the stadium and also the costs that come with the stadium? Yeah,
the DC is different for one reason, is because DC is not a state. It's Congress has control over the RFK land. That makes their pursuit different. Virginia's pursuit is different too, because the budgets here are every 2 years, and we're in the middle, not even through the first year of the budget. So they have to do some special session stuff work to even get a study going for a new stadium. That's why Maryland, and I talked to Wes Moore last Thursday when he was out at camp here in Ashburn. They, they're in the driver's seat. I mean, they have the stadium, they have there. What they don't have, in which Dan Snyder, and this is, Jack Kent Cook before him, they didn't build up around there. There's really, you go to the stadium, you go home. There's really nothing you're going to go around that site of, because there's not the restaurants we see in other places. It's not the lodging, the sports bars. They didn't really have that around there because they didn't build that up. It was a parking lot. It's still a parking lot. They didn't do anything with that land. They have 200 acres there. So that's what makes this one different. And this is going to be a year or two away from even knowing who's the front runner. I mean, this is going to be they're not going to, a lot of things can change, especially winning, but this is this group from Harris to Mitch Rales, they're locals. They know what's going on around here. They know, the different states and DC, and they're gonna be lobbying. Dan Snyder had his lobbyists. I'm sure Josh Harris is ramping up his lobbyists. It's a little early for that because we don't know, where it's gonna go, but this is gonna be a very big thing. So they're gonna want public money, and NFL stadiums typically command it. They got over $1 billion for the Buffalo. We got about $1 billion for the down there in Nashville. So for the Titans, they're the only one recently that didn't really get much. There was some local help was in LA for the Chargers and Rams stadium, but it's going to be they're going to be kind of, I wouldn't say slow played it, but they're going to be very kind of taking their time and seeing which of the three, and we don't even know if it's going to be the same, for if it's DC, it's likely going to be RFK. So we don't know where. I mean, obviously they looked at Prince William County, and for Maryland, it's the most straightforward. It was probably going to build it next to the current stadium and then try to build up everything around it. Maybe turn the current site into a entertainment district. The FedEx Field where it is now. There's a lot of variables, and I think we're still a couple years away from finding out which one is going to be the best fit.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting, and it's going to be the math. The math is different math than it is for any other stadium site in the country, and well, hopefully there's other people around to do it because I'm terrible at math. AJ Perez, Front Office Sports, better at math than me. Appreciate.
No, I'm
you,
not.
Stu.
I'm dyslexic.
No, okay,
so,
not AJ Perez. That is AJ Perez.
Don't ask me for math help.
Yeah, but not for math help. For reporting on business, AJ Perez, Front Office Sports. Thanks for joining the show as always, man.
Thanks for having me on.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are, of course, streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980. God, in the break, I just had a bar from our little market shop, and apparently there was something in there that dries out your mouth. I think that radio stations should be far more careful and considerate of the people who talk into microphones when it comes to their food selections. There's just certain things that we shouldn't have in markets. If your market has, what's it called? The bubbly water. Sparkling water. Why? Why do you have sparkling water? I was dumb enough to get it once, and then I just felt like I was going to burp on the air for an hour and a half. Now, should I have some self-restraint and not have gotten the sparkling water? Sure. But, them's the breaks. If you're have some kind of like bar situation, then let's not get one that's going to dry out of people's mouth. I don't know if the people who bought them know that, but I'm letting you know. I don't want to call out the brand because it was delicious. What I had was good. It just apparently I also need some refreshing water, which is something I wouldn't have known until I started talking, which is something that doesn't happen until you crack the microphone. And this also feels like something that should go for me in the negative column on the fine board, but Anthony's not here today, so no rules, no referees, no fines. That's what I'm saying. Chris, I'm gonna use you here as I know you don't have the video pulled up over there. She's gonna be disembodied voice Chris, who's filling in for Anthony today. You've been working in radio for like 20 years.
Almost 20.
What's the worst thing you've seen in a radio station snack bar?
Oh, gee. Okay, so this isn't even food, but the worst thing, I worked at a station once where the manager wanted to save money on shredding certain documents, old tax documents that were no longer needed and stuff, and he took one of the trash cans in the kitchen, filled it up with water. He looked at some stupid YouTube video on how to destroy paperwork using water, and he's like, I'll just put it in here over the weekend, and then it'll all be destroyed. It was the stupidest thing. He had this.
Can I take a wild guess at how this ended? It didn't work.
No, it made a huge mess. I mean, I was basically watching this is so dumb. This will never work. I don't know what he's doing. And then by the end of it, I was like, I clearly was trying to avoid having anything to do with this because
you don't want to be. Hey, Chris,
basically just made a huge mess in the kitchen.
Yeah. Did you guys at least get content out of that?
No, because he was the boss.
Failed. Here's the thing. If you are a boss in a media environment and you make a fool of yourself and you don't turn that into content, you should fire yourself immediately. Because what's the point? You just... Sadness. But that's where we're at today. Take Command coming up in just a few minutes. I wanted to circle back. We didn't get to play a lot of the Sam Howell sound yesterday. So I wanted to circle back to a little bit of that real quick. And then coming up in our Take Command segment that we're airing for you here on the radio, we will talk about Sam Howell, talk about Ron not naming him the starter yet. Logan and I disagree a little bit on how, not necessarily how important, but the merit of waiting till after the preseason game versus doing it Friday. So we'll air that for you coming up in about 9 minutes. But I think the thing that has impressed me the most about Hal is his composure and the way in which he has been able to just be so steady as a dude. Forget as a quarterback. He's had good days and bad days with good throws and bad throws and varying levels of reading the defense correctly and, all that kind of stuff. But they've thrown a lot at him. One, this Eric Bieniemy's playbook is a lot. It's very wordy. There's a lot of motions. There's a lot of shifts. There's a lot of stuff that's happening, and he's been able to handle all of it. 2, this defense is really good. 3, this defense has a lot of kind of funky blitz packages and things that they've been working on at times, and some of these pressure periods have been really, really hard for Sam. And he just keeps going back and doing it. He just has this demeanor, and I think it's been really impressive to watch. And he spoke yesterday after the Ravens practice about how part of that is actually not thinking at all.
Yeah, I think the main thing is I'm just more confident in the offense, and I'm way more comfortable out there calling the plays and knowing what we're trying to accomplish with the play that we're calling. And I feel like I'm in a really good place mentally with what Evie's trying to do, and we're on the same page. And it's just a lot fun. It's a lot more fun going out there now, and I'm kind of just playing instinctive at this point. I'm going back to, how I'm just out there playing football at this point. There's not really much thinking to go on, just because I'm very comfortable with the offense.
Obviously, it also helps to have 17, 1, and 4. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel. And I would say for now, still in that order. Dotson's trying his damnedest to push Terry, but Terry's so good. And you see it yesterday, and you see it on Tuesday. You get in these competitive situations, you ramp up the intensity. And it's something Logan and I talked about in a different part of the pod, which I would highly suggest everyone listen to. Again, Take Command available wherever you get your podcasts. But we talked about how certain players really stepped up in these 2 days. And a lot of it was the veteran players who had some know-how. And while Marcus Kemp, for instance, to go down roster a bit before circling back to Terry, like Marcus Kemp has not had a particularly great camp. He's a guy that a lot of us had projecting on the roster that kind of had fallen off and, surpassed by Byron Pringle, another guy who's with Bieniemy and KC. And all of a sudden, the last 2 days, you're like, oh, Marcus Kemp. And in the preseason game, like, are you really going to hold it against him that he makes this crazy good catch on the sideline in a preseason game and he's got a half a toe out of bounds? Like, he still made the catch, still contested. Yeah, try it again. Next time he'll be inbounds. But you see the production in the game. You see the production in these 2 days, and it comes with some level of know-how of just like having played NFL football against other teams and being able to adapt quickly. And you see a guy like McLaurin on the high end of things just show out. All of a sudden, his catch numbers are up. Like you realize maybe he was cruising in practice a little bit, or there's just a different gear that if you get him in a competitive situation, he goes to, and other folks can't. Even a Marlon Humphrey on day one of practice can't keep up. And so Howell was asked about the appreciation he has for Terry and how it's grown working with him after kind of watching him from the side more last season.
Yeah, I mean, I love Terry. He's an awesome competitor, man. It was so much fun to watch him yesterday, especially when they had Marlon Humphrey on him for pretty much most of the day, and Terry was kind of fired up, and he had a really good day. So it's just so much fun to go out there knowing I have a guy that no matter who's covering him, he's going to get open, and he's going to make a play. And so it just makes my job so much easier.
I think the unsaid thing there, too, is even when he's not open, I can throw him the ball and it'll somehow still catch up with it. One of my favorite things I listened to all summer, I've mentioned this before for other reasons, is the interview Terry did with The Pivot. Just an hour of really great stuff. He talked about everything under the sun. But one of the things they kind of stopped down on, which I thought was really cool and interesting, was the Indianapolis game last year where Terry talks about, like, the ball's in the air, and he's kind of thinking, while the ball's in the air, at the end of that game, this is me and a Hall of Famer, Stephon Gilmore. They're about to go up for this ball with the game on the line. I'm going to go get it. And, like, when you can have that mentality of, like, oh, this ball's mine. That Hall of Famer is about to get mossed. And you have that at 6'1" or whatever Terry is, not exactly the biggest dude, and your competitiveness is just that much in overdrive, that knowing you can throw to that, and you think of the Green Bay game last year, the catch over Alexander on that key third down, like, there is something to that, the confidence it gives a quarterback, and confidence means a lot to a quarterback. And also, if the confidence is in your best guy, hopefully that leads to throwing to the best guy more, because getting Terry McLaurin the proper amount of targets has been an issue the last couple of years. Last thing we'll play from Howell, just where he thought he got better. We talked to him after practice yesterday. This is from yesterday's practice, and so he was asked what he felt like he got better at today, which was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good 2 days of work. I'm very pleased with our performance offensively. I thought we did some really good things as a group. Obviously, there was a couple pressures that got us on, which they were just kind of things that we didn't really game plan for, but we kind of went back after yesterday and watched the film, and we're able to come out here today and have some answers for those things. But it's more difficult when you're not really game planning for another team. But I think we did, for the most part, did a really good job.
I think that's kind of the theme of the 2 days. The Ravens look like they did a little bit of game planning. Like, and it speaks to the personality of the two head coaches. Like, Harbaugh is nuts and wants to win everything, no matter what. And Ron is much more process-orientated, where he's like, we're going to win when it matters. We're going to focus on getting better right now and do the things we need to do through our calculations. And if we lose right now, there's no scoreboard. It's a practice. Like, who cares? We'll beat you in when the game starts. And Harbaugh's like, we got to kill him. And so his nut self was like, we're going to game plan some stuff. And what happened was day 2, the Commanders overall like closed the gap because they went back and watched the film from day 1 and had some solutions to some of the problems that the Ravens presented. And so, you go watch the tape and it's like, okay, hey, well, if they do this again, this is how we'd cover it. They do it again, they cover it, and the result is better. So that was kind of a theme of the 2 days of practice that was cool to watch, and it's something that Logan really saw when he went back and watched the tape. And it's cool now to go back and hear Sam talk about it and really have that deeper understanding of exactly what he's talking about. Speaking of things that Logan said into the microphone on Take Command, he's a very, very smart man. He watched an insane amount of football on tape to get ready for that podcast. We want to share some of his insight with you here on the radio. So next, the offensive film breakdown of the practices against the Ravens, how the O-line do, how did Howell do, and should Ron have named him the starter / when should Ron name him the starter? That is next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Let's get right to it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. And we are going to play for you now the offensive film breakdown from Take Command today. Myself, Logan Paulson, full pod wherever you get your pods. Without further ado, ready, set, America. Here is analysis. So let's get into it. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. Craig Hoffman here, Logan Paulson there. Let's dive into the offense. We'll circle back to the defense in a little bit. And, of course, I feel like we need to clarify. We're talking about the Washington 1 offenses. Obviously, both offenses
happening at once. And it's so hard to watch these things and try to take away.
Yeah.
And, you walk away feeling one thing, but if you miss 20 plays on the other field, then maybe you were completely wrong. But to the best of our abilities, let's talk about this one offense for Washington, and let's start with the O-line. That was the biggest question, obviously, going into this. And part of the question was, like, where are they because this Washington defensive line is so good? Like, are they getting their butts kicked on a somewhat regular basis because they're facing the best D-line in football, or because they've got real issues? And I feel like we got some level of answers. I will say for me, Logan, like, my being there initial takeaway was they held up pretty well. I do think that they had some problems on day 2 in some of the blitz periods, but also that's the nature of the drill. Day 2, there's a lot of pressure. That also happened to be where the big fight on that field was someone got through to Sam and touched his helmet, and someone grabbed his helmet, and Antonio Gibson and some others did not take well to that. And it's like, hey, don't touch our quarterback, and that's why you get that's why you get the big blow up there, and Ron absolutely losing it on the offense. But also, like, EB's like, hey, don't touch our quarterback.
Yeah, seriously.
So long story short, like, I do think we saw in the Cleveland game that there are some issues occasionally with pressure with him. That's to be expected for a young quarterback. But the O-line in general is starting to come together, starting to gel, and is hopefully going to be able to get to that average level that we're hoping they get to. We know they're not going to be great, but some of the issues might just be that they're facing John Allen, Daron Payne, Montez Sweat every day.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Baltimore, I thought they overall did pretty good. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so hard in practice to judge because guys are like, even in a joint practice, especially like Leno is a good example. Like, he's always kind of trying stuff out. You know what I mean? He's like trying on this, that, and that. And so I don't know what guys are working on. I don't know what their focus for practice is necessarily. But I will say, like, when you look at the Baltimore defensive line, I thought an interesting matchup was Michael Pierce versus Nick Gates, right? Nick Gates is, the new center, obviously, and Michael Pierce is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen in person from a width standpoint. He's a big guy. And I remember the first time I saw him, I was in Atlanta. I was like, that guy can't be like a real human. He's just too big. But people
That's two dudes stuffed in a suit.
Yeah, but he's like so quick and athletic for how big he is, and I really thought like that was a really interesting matchup because Baltimore runs like this 3-4, so like they play like a true nose, and Pierce is a true nose. So to see Gates kind of have to work that matchup, I thought was really interesting because I thought like in one-on-ones and in team he did a good job, but there was a little bit more pressure from the center spot than we've seen in practice, and a little bit of that's a defensive stylistic thing, right? The other guy that I thought was interesting for Baltimore was Odafe Owe, the guy from number 99 from Penn State, who came out the same year as Micah Parsons. And he is a guy that is like, obviously has this athletic freak upside, but has been very quiet. And to see him in person, I felt like he was a guy that is on the borderline of becoming kind of an elite rusher. And again, it's important to note that in this 3-4, you get like wider rush angles, right? So he has got a little bit more space to kind of be more creative with the rush. And I thought, in one-on-ones, he did a good job of like making some of the tackles look silly, but in team, he's a little quieter, but again, there's some pressure. So I think on the whole, it was kind of like what you expected, maybe a little bit better. Like they did a good job picking blitzes up. They did a good job passing up. I think Sadiq had one in team blitz the first day where, they're sliding to the right, the linebacker off the ball that they're sliding to runs to the backside A gap. So they're sliding right, linebacker hits the left A gap, and I'm pretty sure Sadiq should like pass that off. That's one Sam has to throw away. But I think you feel pretty good about what they did. And again, it's the thing that again gets the hairs on the back of your neck standing up a little bit. Just nothing serious, but something to keep an eye on is in these one-on-one situations. Is this group consistently good enough at winning those, right? And the good thing about offensive linemen is you don't always have to be in a one-on-one because it's 4 versus 5. So it's like, where does that help go? And I have backs and tight ends to help out with that stuff. But that's something that I'm always like with this group this entire offseason. It's like, are they good enough to consistently win one-on-ones? And this practice, I thought they were like at like a 75, 70-ish% win rate, which is good. But like, is that good enough to kind of carry you? I guess it would be my question. So.
Right. Here's my question for the offensive line. Can they do it without holding? Can they do it without penalties? And that is one thing that
which they were pretty good at. There were refs there.
There were, and I don't think that there were many calls, if any, that I can remember. I'm sure there were at some point, but it's something that I was on with the Junkies earlier this week, and they were asking me about. And like I said, like in a practice setting, it's easy to blow past that stuff. And honestly, for like holding and stuff, it's even easier when you don't have referees at practice. It's one thing when the refs are there and they throw the flag and you're like, okay, that was a hold. But unless you see it with your own eyes, and you might be watching a wide receiver DB matchup, like you don't know how much of that stuff happens inside of the line at any given practice where there's no referees. And so understanding, kind of the proficiency of your O-line without being able to hold, without, an illegal hands to the face, without these things that absolutely kill drives is damn near impossible unless you go back and watch every single matchup on tape and be like, oh, that guy held there, that guy didn't, whatever, which obviously I don't have the access to do, nor the time, nor the desire. But it is something that once you get in games, like, is super important. And for a guy specifically in Andrew Wiley, who was one of the more penalized linemen in the league, and had 2 penalties, one of which resulted in a safety in the game 1 against Cleveland. Like, being able to do this stuff cleanly is a concern. And I think that as it comes together and we get obviously into the games, and I hope we see them. I think we'll see the starters against Baltimore in the preseason, and then we'll see when we get to Arizona, or when Arizona comes here. Like, that is something that I'm going to have concerns until we're into the season and it's been clean for a couple games, just because we don't have the ability to get the data on that beforehand. But it's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But clearly, even with that said, like, this line is getting better.
Yeah, and I think to the holding point, like there was 1 or 2 maybe with Wiley where I was like, is that a hold? But I think, like when you watch the practice, there are clean pockets. And like I mentioned, I think the more glaring matchup was Nick Gates and Pierce. And I think even though Pierce was getting good pressure, like pushing and collapsing the pocket, I thought Gates, gave Sam enough opportunity to like step up and move around and do some things in there that were good. So even though like it looks like when you watch it, that was one of the days I got to watch on the iPad, like the ability for them to kind of keep the pocket with, I thought was good. So, and in team like Wiley's pretty good, you know what I mean? Against a good rusher and a Dafayoe. So, I do think it's something definitely to keep an eye on. And I think it's something to keep an eye on in this game, because I would imagine the starters will play a fair amount. I don't know that, I'm just speculating, but I think,
Ron has given that indication. So,
okay, good. So,
they, whatever it's worth, though, they will not be playing Baltimore starters. Baltimore's playing no one.
Yeah, well, they don't like to do that anyway.
Yeah,
they've got enough like sneaky depth where you feel like that's okay for them. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's just like that team is so deep. Like watching their one-on-ones, I'm like, their backup, their 3rd string left tackle is probably a starter for some teams in the NFL. It's just weird how they've been able to accumulate all these like talented players, I don't know. It's just like their roster construction is always super interesting to me, because like their 2 backup tight ends are pretty good football. You know what I mean? It's just like they've got like weird sneaky depth. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that'll be good. And I think what you'll see is the guys that are going to play much better. Like every week, every single day, they get better and they improve. So people are concerned about the O-line. I'm less so concerned. I think that group's going to be better than people think. And I think once the game plan stuff goes in and EB's, working the magic, and you get some of those unusual formations and motions and pre-snap sets, it's just going to help that group out when you're calling screens the way you want to call screens. And I think it's not going to be quite as big. It'll be an issue, but it's not going to be like it's an issue like it is for every single team. But I don't think it's going to show up in the same way down in and down out the way I think some people think. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, so what did Sam do with those pockets, and how did Brissett look? The newsy item, if you will, is I asked Rivera. So I'll give the background of how this went down. Like, we had the press conference, ask Ron how things are going, ask him about the O-line, ask him about Sam, and he's very complimentary of Sam in a way that I don't feel like he usually is. Not that he's not complimentary of Sam, but he typically always works in like Jacoby and Fromm, and he's like always very team oriented. And he was kind of more pointed in complimenting Sam, and I was like, I wonder if he's trying to tell us something. And obviously, Anthony Richardson was just named the starter in Indy. You have that starting to happen around the league where teams are naming their QB1s for the season. And so I just straight up asked, I was like, hey, Ron, other teams are starting to name their starting quarterbacks for the season. Are you at a point where you're ready to do that? And he goes, no, not yet. I have to talk to EB and Tavita, but like Sam's done a great job. Jacoby's also done a great job. We feel really good about our quarterback room. So that's kind of the newsy item. But how did Sam actually perform to the? My guess is well enough that he's probably going to be named QB1 for the season on Friday.
Yeah, no, I think that feels right. I mean, is it perfect at practice? No, but I think you're seeing like a maturity from him. And I think coupling today or the two joint practices, with the preseason game where he came out and I think did some stuff that you were hoping he would do, like in terms of extending plays, getting the ball out of his hand. And, was he perfect? No. Was he perfect in these practices? No. But I think you saw, again, like a playmaking ability that this team hasn't had at the quarterback position along. And you're willing to kind of take some of those, in between lumps, I would say, Ron is being complimentary. Like, he deserves it, man. He's done a really nice job this offseason. And he did a nice job in these practices. Like I mentioned the team blitz period already, which to me was great. Showed a lot of maturity on his part. And I think, Jacoby did some really good stuff, but it's just so stylistically different with Jacoby. Like, he's going to hang in there and manipulate safeties and do some stuff that's a little bit kind of veteran-ish, but he's holding the ball a long time, and I think there's an urgency to his play, which I like. There's a confidence to his play, which I like. And he seems to have good chemistry with the guys we mentioned who had good days, Terry, Sam, or Curtis, and Jahan. Mm-hmm. And then we haven't even mentioned Cole Turner, who I thought had a very mature, like nothing crazy, but just caught the ball.
He just was good. He just made a lot of catches. Like I feel like every time I looked up, I feel like there was a lot of times when I wasn't watching that field, like when I was watching the defense field, I would look up and kind of peer over to the offense field, and there'd be another catch for Cole Turner.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And and so I think like there's a good mature group there. I think like we mentioned, the offensive line's getting better. The backs were kind of quiet, I thought, this week a little bit. And we're getting off point with Sam a little bit, but yeah, my point with Sam is that I think if he were to announce, if Ron was to announce it today for whatever reason, I think he'd be like, yeah, that feels right. Yeah. Based on the preseason game, based on these two practices, based on the practices he's had prior to that, like he's matured well. And all that kind of stuff about, he was potentially going to be the first round pick, blah, 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 all that stuff. Like you see some of that stuff. And again, it's not perfect, but it's never perfect. And I think you see it's like it's that thing, that je ne sais quoi, that like the magic it factor. When you're with like a good quarterback, it's just something about it. Like I just think back to when I was with Matt Ryan or when I was with, Deshaun Watson before everything went crazy. Like there's a confidence and it's like where confidence meets ability. And I think you're starting to see that with Sam. So like, that's what I would say is like, yeah, he deserves that opportunity. So,
yeah, I mentioned earlier in the pod, his demeanor, his maturity, like the way he handled all the great part, but he's going to make mistakes because he's young and it's the NFL and it's hard. Even the best make mistakes sometimes, but he just keeps going. And there is a stubbornness that I mean is a positive that is really, really impressive and not necessarily common even amongst good quarterbacks. I mean, like we watched the quarterback show on Netflix and saw Kirk, occasionally like really get frustrated. I watched that here in person, as did you. Like, and that's not to say like Kirk is bad or mentally weak or anything. Like he's human. And Sam has almost this superhuman like ability to just not get flustered. And for a young guy that's going to make some mistakes, that's essential. And I think it's not just like outwardly expressing anger, right? Mm-hmm. It's not losing confidence and going back under center or getting in the gun, getting the next snap and executing like you're supposed to and making good, clean decisions and not letting your brain get sped up and get overwhelmed. Like there's such a psychological element to playing quarterback that involves clear-headedness so you can process information quickly. And I think he's got that in a major, major way. And then you also see some of these throws where he's like rolling left, sidearm back right with velocity. Or there's one ball he completed to Jahan, I think at the end of day one, where there's this little token, kind of RPO-ish looking fake in the backfield. It holds Kyle Hamilton just a second, and then he lasers, I think it's a speed out to Jahan. Maybe it was a sit route. But Hamilton tries to break on it, and he just fastballs it by him. And, I told the story on the radio, but I was standing there with Zach Selby, writer for Commanders.com. I go, Zach, if that's Heineke last year, that's a pick six.
Yeah.
Like, the arm strength, you can beat people with your arm. Not that you want to get a habit of it, but, like, it opens up the offense to more possibilities. And when you have that kind of natural talent. And from the mobility where he does pick up a couple of first downs with his legs throughout the practices, to his ability to escape, to make throws on the run, to just sit back there and dart someone. Like, there's a lot of potential there. And so I think the only reason Ron hasn't named him the starter yet, and again, like we all said all summer long, like wait till the joint practices are over and then they'll name a starter as long as everything's gone according to plan. It has. They just have to sit down, go over the tape of the second day of practice, and Ron didn't want to do that or name a starter before talking to EB and Pritchard and saying, hey, I'm going to tell the press and everybody that Sam is the starter, which is the professional, proper way to handle that. But it would not surprise me if Ron, who speaks before practice on Friday morning, opens up the press conference before questions and says, hey, guys, just want to let you know, Sam Howell will be our starter week 1 against Arizona and for the rest of the regular season.
I mean, do you think he waits till after the second preseason game?
He could. But I don't think...
I probably would if I was him. I don't know.
Why would you do that? I don't disagree. I'm just curious.
Just another data point. Like, hey, you've done a really good job. Like, and it's such a close proximity to that data point. What is it? 4 days out. So it's like, why? Like, let's play the game. It's good. I'm assuming it's going to go well. But if it's like a garbage fire, then I want to be able to like, okay, I'm glad I didn't say that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
Well, but I guess my counter to that would be we have so many data points at this point, and the data you're going to get in a preseason game is so limited. Like, I asked Kendall about missing the first game because Kendall spoke to us after practice as well, and he goes, one series is not going to make or break my preseason or my prep for the regular season, and so you've got. At this point, thousands of plays that you've run in practice. Maybe not thousands for Sam, but hundreds for Sam. And then you're going to judge it based off of 2 to 3 series in the preseason. Like, I just think that even if it is a dumpster fire, I don't think it's that close between Sam and Jacoby either. It's not like Jacoby has been, right on his heels when you factor in the curve of Sam's upward mobility potential, the fact that he could be the guy for the future. Like, I just don't think that the race is close enough, if you will. And so there's also a part of me that's like, hey, let's give him that spotlight. We're on Monday Night Football. Like, we want people talking about our guy. Like, we want everyone to know, like, this is our guy and we have the confidence in him. Hey, Joe Buck, Sam Howell's our starting quarterback. Introduce him that way on the broadcast.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, you always think about it from that. To me, it's just like when I'm making evaluations, like, and I have one more free data point that is, I think to Kendall's point, a guy, what is he, in year 8? Like, it doesn't really matter. The series doesn't matter, right? And obviously Baltimore is going to treat this game a little bit differently than the Commanders. But I just want to, like, for a guy with such little experience as Sam, like, why not get one more data point? Is my point. And it doesn't really, like, why rush to make the announcement in my book? Like, I think everybody probably feels the same way you feel. Everyone in the building probably feels the same way you feel. Like I'm if he made the announcement tomorrow, I'd be like, cool, great, like, awesome, because I think he deserves it. But again, like, would I be surprised if Ron or the staff is like, let's give him one more look and make sure everything's copacetic?
No. I guess my point would be, what could possibly happen in the preseason game from a performance standpoint that changes my mind?
Yeah,
and I'm at the point where nothing. If the answer is nothing,
right?
Then it's like a match play golf where you're up 4 holes with 3 to play. They don't play the last 3 holes. They just call the match. Yeah. And so at that point, I think that's how I would handle it. Anything else from the offense? I think we probably should touch on the backs real quick. Like, they were kind of quiet.
Yeah.
And also, like, 1 or 2 quick notes from me on some of the day 2, like, individual drill stuff. Chris Rodriguez was awesome in one-on-one pass pro, and the other two backs, granted, like Brian Robinson was not good. He was also facing Roquan Smith in a one-on-one pass pro drill with no help and whatever.
It's a tough drill.
Yeah, that's tough sledding,
especially if you don't do that drill a lot. It's really hard.
Which they don't.
Yeah, it's really hard to get up like physically for that drill because usually there's all these parameters like, hey, you can't, like, I know when we run it here or when we used to run it when I was on the team, you can't bull rush, right? And like Roquan first play is like bull rush and B-Rob, and it's like, did B-Rob even know?
And you have a running head start. Like it's not fair. But Chris Rodriguez, he stoned his dude twice, like 2 reps each, and he was awesome. I think Gibson split his reps. Again, Robinson got bulled, but like Roquan Smith gets a running head start to run into you, like unless you're Trent Williams.
And you can't cut, right? Like you can't cut in those drills. And in the game, like you can't, there's always, so that's the thing about that one-on-one pass pro drill. Like usually like you can't bull because the back can't cut. And so like they tried to move him up, they tried to limit the space, but I'm like, still, like this favors the linebacker. You know what I mean?
In a major way.
Yeah.
But I guess my thing was if Rodriguez is a guy who you can trust, and Alex Arma also was fantastic in that drill, as you would imagine as a fullback.
He's a big guy.
Like I do wonder, in certain situations, if those guys find themselves on the field in third down for some more max pro type of stuff, depending on the route concept, the combination. It's just another option in EB's bag that I thought was interesting. But his runners, his pass catchers, like what did you see from the backs on, I would say, quieter days for them?
Yeah, quieter days. And so I will say on the first day, I thought they ran the football well. I thought they blocked runs well. I thought the double teams were good. I thought the RPOs were executed well. I thought decisions from the quarterback on RPOs were great. I think the guy that stood out to me probably the most was Chris Rodriguez as a runner. And again, like a little bit of it is there was I think it was a power. So like, tight end to the right, they're in a single back formation. The guard's trying to kick out the end. And the guard, if this would have happened to me, I would have been pretty pissed, I think. But he kind of like falls into Chris Paul's legs, which is like, I don't want to say dirty, but like it would have bothered me as a player if that would have happened. So there's a big pile and he kind of cuts off that and then just powers into the pile. And there's a little crease there, but he ends up getting probably 6 yards on that. And you can tell the Baltimore guys are like trying to stop him. And I was like, that's where that kind of sneaky power comes in. He had a Wanda, so running away from the tight end, kind of outside zone, where he's able to kind of get in the crease and a guy tries to come and punch the ball out and just totally gets spun out because he's not expecting how strong he is. And I thought there's a guy who is kind of hitting his stride at the right time. And he got a lot of reps. He got more reps than normal. He did have a false start. Got to point that out. But I think he's that physicality in the pass protection, that physicality running the football, I think is going to get him on the field. Like just knowing EB and talking with EB, not about Chris, but just like understanding EB's mindset. Like I think that's stuff he values, and you're going to see him on the field a little bit more maybe than I thought when they drafted him. I thought I liked him as a player. He was one of my favorite running backs, but like just to see kind of him in the preseason, him in this joint practice, the physical mindset and the fact that it seems to be transferring, I think is pretty cool. So, again, B-Rob didn't practice a ton. Gibson didn't practice a ton. It was mostly the young guys. I'm sure they're probably, a little bit concerned about injuries and things like that. But Chris Rodriguez definitely stuck out to me in that capacity.
Yeah, no, he's had a good week here, and we'll see. I imagine that's going to extend into a good 10 days in the preseason game because that dude's a gamer, and when you got to actually tackle him, good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, and so the other thing I wanted to point out with the young guys is Stromberg, right? He played guard pretty much the whole time, and he did a really nice job, I thought. I wasn't sure if he could play guard. I was a little skeptical because he doesn't have like ideal guard length and strength, but in the team setting, so he's working with the twos at right guard, and he's working in one-on-ones, and I thought, man, like this guy's having a pretty gosh darn good day, I think, and that was pretty impressive to me. Like the fact that he came out there, he's working with Tyler Larson. They got great combinations. They had a nice little combination where Jonathan Williams would have squirted out for probably a 10-yard gain. And like his hat's in the right spot, his hands are in this right spot. Pass pro was clean. And I thought, in a pinch, like if you're going to keep him on the 53 and he didn't play guard, like that is now on the table. And obviously I want to see him do it in the game setting, obviously. But in terms of guys that I thought really, really helped their stock out, he's got to be, if he's not at the top of the list, he's got to be pretty darn close. So I just wanted to bring him up real quick.
By the way, did you see your boy Braden Daniels, the one-on-one rep where he got trucked?
That is
credit to him. He bounced back. They ran it back with the same dude, and he did a good job on the second rep. But he just got in a bad spot, and it almost happened in slow motion because he got down in his stance and he kept backpedaling, and there's no contact. And basically, the Baltimore rusher just waited till there was enough space and was like, "I have room to accelerate now," and then bowled him literally straight over.
It was a sneaky rush too. Like you don't see like that. So like that's the problem about doing these joint practices. I'll tell you is they've got some really like twitchy pass rushers deep on that Baltimore depth chart. And so that guy comes out and does like, I don't even know what I'd call it. He like pops straight up, like he almost jumps, like does like a vertical jump. And Braden Daniels is like, like you can tell he's like, what the hell are you doing? And kind of like he drops his hands. And then dude, when his feet hit the ground, just hits him with a bull. And I've not really seen that. I've seen Vaughn do stuff like that where you kind of raise your shoulder pads, to like act like you're doing a move and then hit a bull. But I thought that's a pretty sneaky rush for a guy who's like your fifth pass rusher, you know what I mean? But Braden Daniels, like that's a tough rep. Like that sucks. But
how do you bounce back? And he did. They ran it back and he did a good job, won the rematch. So and that's
they did 2 rematches, he won both, so good for him. And then in team, like dude, as a pass protector, he's still figuring it out. But I think you're starting to see some of the athleticism as a run player. Like they had a counter where he's like is on the linebacker before the linebacker even moves his feet. And like those are the types of things that get me going, all right, like you drafted him because he's a good athlete. You're starting to see the good athlete stuff because he's like not thinking so much. Like, can we get that athleticism to translate to the pass protection? But as a run player, he's starting to become like, this is the kind of guy Kyle Shanahan would love because he's so fast to the second level. So I'm like, like we're starting to see signs of life, which is good. So hopefully that continues, and he becomes a ball player. You know what I'm saying? But I do think like in terms of trajectory, it was pretty like there was no pulse for a while, and now we got something, right? We pushed Epi, we're ready to rock and roll, and I think. Keep an eye on that guy, especially in the last couple of preseason games, because I think he's playing better. Andre Jones, I thought had a nice week. He got some reps.
Yeah, let's get to the defense in total. And Andre.
Oh, one other thing. Should I be doing the trending now this break?
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the.
Should I be doing trending now this break?
Get your podcast. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Moving around, if you're moving on YouTube, sorry for whatever jarring like roller coaster type experience I just gave you. It's the Hoffman Show in 4D. Whoa! If you're listening on the radio and that didn't make any sense to you because you couldn't see me just move the computer screen like a crazy person and the camera, we'll put that on social media later. Add Craig Hoffman and stuff. Thumbs up. All right, 6 o'clock now. 6:30, we're actually way past 6 o'clock now. But 6:30, we're going to talk to Steven Goff. Lots of soccer news, including Vlatko Andonovski officially stepping down as the head coach of the U.S. Women's National Team. So we'll go kick it with Goff coming up at 6:30. Right now, the Wizards' schedule is out. NBA schedule overall is out. And the Wizards have an interesting one. And you know, it's funny. I was thinking about this earlier. We spent kind of May and June doing a lot of Wizards stuff, talking about this hope for this franchise and kind of talking about it in positive ways that we haven't in a long, long time. And that's encouraging. And then it kind of got forgotten about a little bit as we sit here in August. Look, it's the offseason. Of course we did. What are we going to do? Sit here and do Bilal Coulibaly projections for in the middle of Commanders training camp? No. Just like we're not going to do crazy Commanders stuff if the Wizards are in the middle of something important for them. So, and it's the middle of the offseason for the Commanders. So, it is interesting, like, you know, I went on this rant, if you're just tuning in now, earlier in the show about kind of the angry sports fan and just spends their days seething at the next person who should be fired. And I think what's cool about DC sports is after years of playing this game of like, who's the next team to win a title? And the answer being none of them, with the Nats rebuilding, the Capitals seemingly always falling short except for that one time, the Wizards being hopeless and the Commanders being owned by Dan Snyder and thus hopeless and embarrassing. We're now at a point with the Wizards where it's like, okay, what will they do moving forward? With the Commanders, obviously, what will they do moving forward? The hope is back in town. So anyway, here's how it's kind of the highlights of the Wizards' schedule. I also think Linnell's going to pop in here in a few minutes. So we'll get him his thoughts on this, and I know he wanted to talk about the joint practices too. So we'll do that in a few minutes with Linnell. But season opens at Indiana October 25th. That's a Wednesday night. You then got the Grizzlies at home. That will be a non-Ja Morant game as he's suspended for the first part of the season. Then the Celtics. So you get some good tests, though, early in the season. Indiana, a team that, if you want to be good this year, like that's a team you should be competing with. They're on your level. Memphis, Boston, obviously. Atlanta. And then fifth game of the season, you have a Wednesday night Friday night, the sixth game of the season, you have Miami, which is the first in-season tournament game, if I'm reading this correctly. That or it's the Wednesday game against Atlanta. But that is going to be kind of a fun feature of the early season NBA is very regularly, twice a week, you're going to have these in-season games throughout November. See who wins the pool play, and then the winners advance on to the tournament in December. First Josh Harris Bowl is Monday, November 6th. That one's in Philadelphia. That's actually something I want to ask both the Harris side, the Commanders side, and the Wizards side of things. Is like, typically you do events and you do kind of things from a business perspective with the other teams in town. Is that complicated when the owner owns a team that's out of town? Like for the Wizards and the Capitals, do they want to work with the Commanders on stuff because Josh Harris owns the Devils and the Sixers? I don't see why it would be a bad thing from a business standpoint. Obviously, it's not like you're in there talking strategy. And, you know, when it comes to winning in business, you know, rising tide raises all boats. You want everyone to win because everybody gets more money. And so if you're not competing directly on the field or the ice or the court, then who cares? I just think it's a fun, interesting dynamic. Anyway, the point is, the Friday games are the in-season tournament. You got Charlotte. You have a nice little homestand in the middle of November. Luka Doncic comes to town on November 15th. Then you have a in-season tournament game against the Knicks on the 17th. Giannis comes to town in that stretch, so you have Dallas, New York, Milwaukee home games all in a row, which is pretty cool. In the middle of November, then you get into December. You'll have potentially the other games on the in-season tournament, and then they're home for the holidays, basically. Or one of their longest homestands of the season is Orlando, Toronto, Brooklyn, Atlanta, between December 26th and December 31st. So that's kind of a 7 nights kind of deal there. So nice compact game. If your friends or family is going to be home for the holidays, take them to a Wizards game. Other notable games on the schedule. Defending champs come to town on Sunday, January 21st. That's a 6 p.m. Tip. You got the Clippers coming to town at the end of January. Then the big one in terms of games you circle this season, Phoenix in town Sunday, February 4th. That's an NBA TV game as Bradley Beal will return for the first time. I could take a cheap shot here and say presuming he's healthy, but that's really for any player. Phoenix will be in town on February 4th. Your All-Star break not too long after that, not before you face the Sixers on February 10th. All-Star break follows Valentine's Day tilt away at New Orleans. Then they're at Denver on the backside of the break. Steph Curry and company come to town February 27th. That sucks because I was planning on being at the NFL Combine then, and I would like to go see Steph Curry play basketball. Well, damn. I guess we'll have decisions to make next February. Then you get into the home stretch of the season, and starting March 17th against the Celtics, the Wizards are home for 11 of their final 15 games. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I hope that they stink and we're counting down the lottery balls. And there's definitely a chance of that, and, the trade deadline will be kind of in the middle there. We've blown by it on the schedule, if you will. But if they are competing for a play-in or playoff spot at that point, they have a really good chance late in the season. There's some very winnable games in that stretch. Who knows? But you start off with Boston. Ironically, you're playing the Celtics at home on St. Patrick's Day. I feel like the Celtics should have to be home on St. Patrick's Day, but what do I know? You have the Rockets. Obviously, the Kings were very good last year. The Raptors could be in a major rebuilding mode. You're at Chicago. You're home against the Nets. Then you got the Pistons, the Heat, the Bucks. The Lakers are in town, so LeBron, you're not going to see him till April. But April 3rd, Wednesday night, they'll be here. Portland, who's obviously probably rebuilding. We'll see what happens with Dame and all that. At Toronto, again, a team that who knows what they'll be by midseason. Home against Chicago, and then so it's 11 of 14 at home, and then they finish on the road. If you have to win the last one, good luck. You're playing Boston, but they might be resting guys at that point. So it's a very interesting schedule for the Wizards because there are definitive opportunities. Kind of the star games in terms of stars coming to town here are spread out, but it's going to be, obviously I think the big thing is to kind of see, like, do they wind up holding on to Kuzma, holding on to Poole throughout the entire season? Do they flip guys? And then how does Koulibaly develop is the biggest question in the franchise, most importantly, because if he turns out to be a stud, well, then now we're having a different conversation. But the Wizards schedule is out. Coming up next, we'll take a look at some of the rest of the highlight games on the NBA schedule, chop them up a little bit. Linnell might pop in as well. If he does, we'll talk some football. And then we'll talk proper football with Steven Goff coming up at 6:30. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Joining me in studio, host of Overtime on 106.7 The Fan, Linnell Willingham. And to the YouTube audience, I'm sorry / I don't know, he's a good-looking fella. I'm sorry.
Tell the people why I'm really not on camera, Craig. Craig doesn't want me to be on the stream today, and I don't know why.
I mean, I could just have you on the stream. And
well, that'd be pretty awkward. Shout out to Charles Leno's camp that I volunteered for a couple weeks ago. Him and Jen doing some good work in the Virginia area.
That's awesome.
Earlier in the summer.
Love that. No, the reason that if you're watching, you're now getting whiplash is because typically when we have the 2 cameras set up, everything's running through my laptop, and your boy forgot his charger at home, so the laptop was on very low percentage, and I made a call to switch to trying to run this through this desktop computer.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll work with 2 cameras, and I don't have time to figure out how to configure it. We made an emergency audible. And so, I mean, if you want, I can just turn the camera around every time.
It'll be fine. I'm sure the YouTube audience will be A-okay with just
awkwardly staring at me as I watch you talk when you're talking in that portion of the conversation.
That's going to be fun.
You want to talk joint practices, though?
I do, because I'm excited. I was listening to the show yesterday. You had one of my favorites on, my man Cordell Woodland, and he does a really good job. He's a Commanders fan who happens to cover the Ravens.
He did not mention
that.
You
didn't? Oh, Hoffman. He's a Commanders fan, so everything
he was
says,
definitely super knowledgeable. That was great, and I was like, you seem to have a good take. You definitely know more about the Commanders than I know about the Ravens.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So
Thank God I'm asking.
He's super honest with his commentary, which is why I was like, awesome for you to get him, because he's really giving you the best of both worlds. He's not going to sugarcoat it for either side, and I think he does a darn good job over for 105.7 and Be More. But yeah, man, you were out there, boots on the ground. First of all, I wanted to ask, was it hard for you? Because you've done a joint practice before.
I've done one.
You did Houston?
No, Jets.
Jets, okay. The Jets practice. So that was in Richmond?
That was in Richmond 2015.
The one thing that I feel like is
2017? I don't know.
Somewhere around then. But I feel like it's hard for us media folk to try to pick what I'm going to focus on for the day, because the fields are split.
Yes.
Offense, defense on one side. One's for the Ravens offense, one for the Commanders defense, and so on and so forth. It's hard to really get around to see everybody. So I was trying to know what your plan was when you were out there.
Hope and pray. It's hard. It was interesting too, because in Pick 6 on one of the days, I was like, Christian Holmes had a good day, and someone commented on the YouTube stream, was like, I saw him get smoked in one-on-ones. I was like, I didn't. I was on the other field. So you see some of the stuff happen, and everything from the newsworthy, noteworthy stuff, like the fights, or that rep. I think there was a rep where Zay Flowers routed up Emmanuel Forbes pretty good, and it's very silly because in some ways it's like covering a game.
Right.
99% of your audience is watching the game on television,
and
when you're there, you might miss something. And then have you because you've been doing mostly post game stuff, so have you covered a game at FedEx yet? Or covered an NFL game? So here's how you cover an NFL game as a press person in the press box, right? Here's the really exciting way you do it. You watch the terrible angle you have out of the press box, and then you go like this. And you lean way back in your chair and look up at the TV, and you hope to catch the live, because obviously it's delayed on television a couple of seconds compared to actually being able to see it happen. And then the replay, and then you rock back up, and hopefully the next play is happening. You get in a nice little rock back and forth.
It makes it more impressive that people are tweeting like they do from the press box.
Then you just miss stuff. And you just hope that you don't miss the important thing. And that is a part of it. But there's also some, the reason you do it, one, if you're a reporter covering the team, the post-game locker room and stuff is valuable. But there's also something to being at the stadium and feeling the energy and the vibes, which actually, week 1, I think I'm going to, I have to do pregame, obviously, and going means I'm going to miss some of the game live. But I think the story week 1 is, what's the atmosphere at the game?
Yeah.
And so I'm planning on going to the game after pregame, because otherwise I miss the story. You can watch it on TV all you want, but otherwise I miss the story.
That's very true. And I think from what the reporting has been saying, that game is very close to being sold out completely, which is going to be really cool. I don't know the last time we've had a true sellout crowd at FedEx. I don't know how many there were last year. They may have lied and finagled the numbers.
The Giants game apparently had a good crowd, but that's close as
Giants game.
Yeah, that was as close. Sorry for the emotional trauma I just dug up for you.
That was tough.
Yeah.
But great. No, I do think that is going to be the huge story in week 1. But even as we look towards Monday. Like I'm curious to see how many fans are going to be out for that Monday night game.
I was going to say, like, what's your prediction? Like, do you think Monday's an event? Week 1 against Arizona is going to be an event. It's the first real game of the Josh Harris era. Is Monday night, like Buck and Aikman are going to be there?
That's what I'm saying. I wish I could.
By the way,
do
there's
that.
a more than 0, but not 100% chance that one of them is going to be on the show on Monday.
Ooh,
just throwing that out
pulling
there.
some strings there.
We're trying.
I'm pretty sure.
But like, do you think that will be an event on Monday, the preseason opener of the Josh Harris era?
If I was not in this chair and wasn't a media member and I was just strictly fan, it would be an event for me because I think it's heck yeah.
Yeah.
First home game post Snyder. I don't care if it's preseason, regular season, training camp. Like last year they did the open practice to fans at FedEx. I think that would have been an event to go to, even if it was that.
Honestly, I wonder if that would have been a bigger event if they did that this year, because they're not, right?
No,
like,
I don't think they are. I don't think
I've
they are.
gotten the schedule.
Because they have 2 more home preseason games. I think Cincinnati is here as well.
Right, and they have 2 home preseason games, and maybe that's why they did it. They just had one last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm excited to
Huge
see
event.
it. I don't think I'm gonna go on Monday just because like I've got the show until.
Well, yeah, that
7:30
would be very tough too.
It's it's
doable. But
it's one thing to go on a Sunday at 1.
Yeah.
It's another thing to try to traverse the belt. And like also, we haven't announced, like we're gonna do pregame on site somewhere this year. We haven't announced where, but it's like I'm just gonna say it this way.
Where.
Yeah, the route to route to FedEx Field's not that bad.
No,
the route from here to FedEx
is horrible. Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, I'm excited for that for your big announcement. When are you going to do that? Because now I'm like,
I don't know.
giddy. I didn't even mention this to you.
I got to
at
talk
all.
to the boss on that one.
Okay, but yeah, that's definitely exciting. Pre-game getting a whole lot bigger here for Odyssey DC, so that's cool. I want to ask you about practice though.
Yeah, we do have a guest at 6:30.
Okay,
so we got to
can you tell me who's the guest? Who's the guest?
Steven Goff from the Post.
Okay,
so we're talking a little soccer.
You saying pick one question for you?
Yeah, pick one thing. Most important thing.
No, I'm not capable of doing this.
It's okay. I'm your friend. Like we can talk off air.
Quarterback. How'd the quarterback look? Both of them.
I think they both looked fine. Like, I think they have been fairly even with Sam being slightly better throughout camp. And I think that
you're so reasonable.
Mostly continued. Like, I mean, I feel like this 2-0 line is like relatively
not bad,
pretty
right?
good.
It's interesting.
And I think that certain thing, like I said this earlier in the show, there's going to be games this year that if quarterback was a position that you could pick it by game, Jacoby's strengths might be better in certain games.
Right.
But overall, Sam's the better guy and worth the upward trajectory and all that stuff. So I think he continued to do that. And I think the biggest thing is he never got flustered. He never got off balance. He just kept playing, and he continually got better throughout the day as he adjusted and figured out what the Ravens were doing.
One quick thing I'm going to ask you on Sunday, I'll tease it now. Are you worried about that sack that he took? That's something that I think is going to reoccur during the beginning of the regular season. And are they able to overcome those? Are they going to be able to overcome that?
That's a better question. Am I worried about the sacks? Yeah, he hasn't seen. He doesn't
Right.
have the Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers
Right.
file of having seen every pressure. Teams
Right.
are going to get him sometimes, and this offensive line is not good enough to make up for all of his, just I don't want to call them shortcomings, but like lack of experience.
Right. Which is a Ron Rivera created problem because they should have played him last year. Oh,
that's a different conversation. All right, you got overtime tonight. 7.
Well, whenever the Nats
yeah.
finish, it'll probably be like 7:30-ish, maybe 8.
That was always my favorite when I hosted that show. It was like
the best.
The worst is when you look up and you're like, because you're not watching the game sometimes, and you're like, oh, when do they get to the 7th inning? I'm still at home. Oh my God, I hope there's no traffic.
Yeah.
So those are fun.
Definitely good.
But you get to hilariously when you used to do this show on a regular basis. Getting you here by 4:30 was a chore. For your shows, you get there 4 hours and 30 minutes before they start.
It's different when you're alone and you don't have the Hoffmeister to lean on.
Yeah, all right.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Appreciate you coming in. And then Linnell's got 9 to 12 Saturday and Sunday on the fan. I'm going to join him. I think 10:25 we said?
10:25 and Sunday. I honestly cannot wait for that because we're going to revisit that convo. I may steal you for 2 segments if you're okay with it because I think you're going to have some real nuanced answers to what I have.
Sounds good. I'll plug in the Comrex and everything.
Let's do it.
All right. I'll see you on Sunday. Steven Goff joins us next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks to Linnell for popping in studio. Real things coming up to end the show, as always. Right now, though, our pleasure to welcome in on the hotline my guy Steven Goff, soccer insider for the Washington Post. Mr. Goff, how are you?
Craig, how are you?
I am doing well. Very happy to have you back on the show. There is so much news. I'm sure you've probably done other podcasts and you've got so much writing to do with all the things from MLS to the U.S. Women's National Team to just the American signing deals overseas. But we're going to start definitely with the U.S. Women's National Team, and we'll see what time we have left after we're done with them. Vlatko Andonovski officially resigns. The U.S. Soccer announcement is they've mutually agreed to part ways, meaning he handed in his resignation, so he didn't get fired, and they said, yes, thank you, we were going to fire you.
Yes.
And then they have these games coming up in September. They've named an interim coach. What does that leave for the short-term state of the program, and how does that parlay into quickly getting someone else in because the Paris Olympics start in less than a year?
Yeah, I mean, they'd like to get started as soon as possible. After the failure at the last Olympics and at this World Cup, there is greater urgency to succeed in Paris next summer for a program that is just not accustomed to going long periods of time without a trophy or a gold medal. The process for finding a permanent head coach will start right away. The U.S. job is one of the highest paid in the world, and it comes with a lot of prestige given the number of championships won. So they'll have a number of candidates. Whether they could nail down the one they want remains to be seen. I mean, the top person out there is the English national team coach, Wegman, who's led first the Dutch and now England to the World Cup final 4 years ago, and then this summer. She's probably out of reach. She makes a lot of money, and England plans to keep her. And so the search goes from there. My hunch is that given the short timetable until the Olympics, they're going to want to get a coach who has experience in a major international tournament. And so perhaps that rules out, someone in the NWSL who's done nothing but club coaching. They want someone perhaps with the type of experience that'll translate into the international arena on short notice.
So if you had, one of the criticisms, I think, of U.S. soccer and the GM, Kate McGrath, over this time is after the shortcomings of the Olympics, and then as they continued to play games, the problems weren't getting fixed. There were still poor performances. They just said, Vlatko's our guy, we're sticking to it, and you see the results ultimately in the World Cup, which many people, myself included, would point to tactical errors and personnel mismanagement, etc. With that said, and what you just laid out about the timeline for Paris and the Olympics coming, do you think they could hire someone for the Olympics without guaranteeing that will be the coach for the entire cycle leading into the next World Cup 4 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you'd like to get someone for the entire cycle. I think that is the goal, and I think they will. I think that's what will happen. Certainly, a new coach will face the challenges and the pressure to get it right away. There are a set of games this fall, and then things will really turn up early next year, and then head into the Olympics. They've already qualified. There's only 12 teams that go to the Olympics. The Olympics are not. It used to be on even par, the Olympics and the World Cup for women's soccer. Now the World Cup's way ahead of the Olympics. So, your priority is the World Cup, but certainly the Olympics comes with a lot of, mainstream interest and prestige. So yeah, you'd like to do better than a bronze as they did in Tokyo. But, I think long term, you gotta look towards 2027 World Cup.
Steven Goff, soccer insider for the Washington Post, is with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Soccer Insider. Of course, read his work at WashingtonPost.com/sports. So, much discussed for those that have been following this, the shortcomings of why this team fell short at the World Cup, this team being the U.S. women. So when you look at what the characteristics, the personality, the whatevers of that will make a good next coach of this team, what are those things, and who do you think ultimately fits that bill?
Yeah, good question. Certainly you want someone who understands the American landscape, understands the American talent pool, which is rich, has always been rich, some years better than others, obviously, and can embrace the transition that's going on as some of the older players, file out, and greater responsibility is placed on this new generation: Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman, Savannah DeMello, Naomi Girma, and several others. The U.S. has always been known for its attacking prowess and its stout defending. Defending was fine at the World Cup. They only allowed 1 goal over 4 matches. So that wasn't an issue. But, Becky Sauerbrunn is close to retirement. And Julie Ertz says she's retiring. And Abby Dahlkemper, who started at the last World Cup, missed this one because of injuries. So, certainly some issues you have to confront. And offensively, that's the thing. I mean, there's always been this great talent, and we saw that they still possess it, but they just didn't capitalize on their chances. And that was glaring in the Sweden game. They dominated the match, didn't score, and then ultimately lost in the shootout.
So there's 2 narratives, Steven, that I think are worth fleshing out a little bit about kind of the state of American, specifically women's soccer. One is that the rest of the world has caught up, and I think that one's a bit overblown. Actually, it's not even overblown. It's that I don't like the phrasing. It's like the rest of the world finally got investment. And, that's great. It's good for the game. There's always been great players. Now they were given a chance, and you see what they can do. But the other one that I think is more interesting, and feel free to touch on both, but I think the one that's more interesting is the idea that, like, the U.S. needs to adapt to a more European style, that they're, more possession-based, and that they can't just rely on this athleticism. And, like, I watch Trinity Rodman every week. I watch Sophia Smith with regularity. There ain't a bunch of athletes out there in the world like them. I think that one, like the problems that created here was you had certain players that didn't, like, you were trying to play 2 styles at once with different players on the field, and Vlatko didn't exactly set them all up to succeed. So I'm curious what you make of those 2 narratives and the validity to either one of them, both the rest of the world catching up, quote unquote, and the stylistic nature that, all of a sudden the U.S. style isn't good enough anymore.
Yeah, in terms of the rest of the world catching up, I think there's this perception that, the U.S. has just absolutely dominated for decades and decades, and all of a sudden, everyone's caught up. Well, I mean, they went between 1999 and 2015, they didn't win the World Cup. And if you look at the games at the last World Cup in France 4 years ago, except for the opener, which was a blowout against Thailand, there were some tight games. And the difference in those games, one of the big differences in those games was the U.S. mentality. The U.S. mentality has always pushed them through in difficult situations. They haven't had a lot of difficult situations, but, in a World Cup, you're going to face them, and they found a way to win. And in this World Cup, they didn't find ways to win. And so that's part of it. I think teams around the world, players around the world have gained greater sophistication. Certainly the technical aspect of the game has balanced out a little bit. You have more players, particularly in Europe, entering professional environments at age 16, at age 17, at age 18. And the U.S. model for a long time was just relying on the NCAA to supply players. Well, players weren't hitting the pros until they were 21, 22 years old for the most part. It's too late compared to what's happening now. So, that's going to require adjustment. And you're starting to see it because you're starting to see more players skip college soccer or leave after a year or two and enter the pros. There's a lot of teenagers now in the NWSL, and that's a positive sign. You can't just rely on the college ranks, and you can't just rely on your junior national teams to provide the talent pool for the senior national team in major competition.
Right, unless you're England, because they've got 4 North Carolina Tar Heels and they're playing in the World Cup final this weekend. So clearly we just picked the wrong ones,
Yeah, I mean, Lucy Bronze, was at UNC for 1 year, and so they pass through. But for the most part, players in England and Spain and Germany are developing at the teenage level in professional environments, and so that's something the U.S. has not had until now.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's something that I know those within the sport are pushing for. And as you get, frankly, like there's a darker, like much more complex side to this where the league couldn't be trusted to handle anybody, nevertheless teenagers. And now as it's become more professional and you have much better people in charge and more investment, you're built to handle potentially even a full academy, nevertheless a couple of teenagers on your roster. It's something I know Mark has talked about with the Spirit and something they would like to do. And, hopefully that's coming here stateside. Steven Goff writing about it all, WashingtonPost.com/sports, on Twitter @SoccerInsider. Also covering, Messi and what he's doing in MLS, everything DC United related. They've had an interesting month, to say the least. All the Americans playing overseas, signing new deals, AC Milan and other places. Steven's got it all covered @SoccerInsider. Steven, always great to chat. Thank you, sir, and hopefully I'll see you at Audi Field here not too long.
Outstanding. Thanks, Craig.
You got it. Steven Goff, everybody. When we get back, it is time for Real Things Real People Said into Real Microphones. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I don't know, Chris, what it is. I don't know whether you're doing this on purpose and you're just like a musical genius over there, but what I feel like the last 3 songs, at least, that you've played coming out on break have been songs that start. This is such an audio nerd thing, and I realize this because I'm wearing headphones, but maybe people realize it listening in their cars. If like one speaker is working, but like that start with a guitar riff or something that's just on one side and then fills in, and it's a weird sensation.
I'm a big fan of that, though.
I am too. I love it. Most people don't know this about me. I don't even know if Anthony would know this about me. But I went initially, before I got into radio on the talking side, I was going to do music production. That was what I wanted to do, and then I found radio and was like, just kidding, I would like to do this.
Yeah, very similar with me. I realized a lot of my friends were very good at instruments, and I was not going to catch up. So I was like, I should learn how to record them and stuff. And then I kind of got into it that way.
Yeah, it does help when we make some of our like fancy imaging things. Many of the ones that we have now are Vic Ferreira productions, and he does a great job. I actually we got some new fancy introductions coming for football season, so I owe Vic some instructions there. But so occasionally I'll still get back in the lab and do like some of the work, which is fun. The sound design, if you will. So that's fun. That is what people learned about me. Sometimes I do this to guest producers. I just pop quiz them at the end of the show. Random things. It's like, I don't know. Hey, let's get to know Chris for 90 seconds. What's your favorite food? Where are you from? What's the thing? So, Chris, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food is probably lobster.
Oh, okay. Highfalutin Chris over here. Not a bad choice at all. Where are you from? Are you a DC guy?
DC and Phoenix. So I am a Commanders and Suns fan.
Oh, how do you feel about the February 4th matchup between the Wizards and the Suns with Bradley Beal returning for the first time?
I'm real excited. The last time they played in DC was on my birthday, and I went to the game. That was in December, and I had a blast, even though both Bradley Beal and Booker were both out that game for injuries. So
yeah,
it was still fun to watch. But you know,
that was like 3 versions of the Suns ago.
Yeah. There are a lot of changes, but you know, as a DC sports fan that is also a Suns fan, you know, they got KD and they got Beal on the team, so it's kind of cool. It's kind of collision of worlds over here. So
yeah, no, you're the one at the center of the collision. Who knew that person existed? But here it is. He's producing the show today. Chris, thank you. Appreciate you. You've done a good job today. Anthony will be back tomorrow, so we will have Haney back in the cut. Clinton Yates will also join us as he does tomorrow on Fridays, so looking forward to that. Practice tomorrow, so we'll have a pick 6 at 6 tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I think that's pretty much it for the show preview tomorrow. Now, Chris, I've told you you've done a good job, and the show's been relatively easy for a couple of hours now. I forgot to tell you in the break. Do you see the Real Things Real People said into real microphone sounder on the board over there, on the hotkeys?
On the hotkeys, no.
Anthony has it up over there. If not, I might be able to find it real quick and play it a different way, because this is the way we end the show. And as I was talking about fancy introductions,
I found it.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, then it's time for Real Things Real People said in real microphones. It's going to be a thing you're going to hit, and there's going to be a bed that you can just fade out and leave underneath me talking. There's your production instructions live on the radio, which is exactly how all of our bosses teach us how to do it. All righty. It's August 17th, and that means that Starbucks and Dunkin' and other coffee joints have decided it is pumpkin spice season. And the Washington Spirit did the Lord's work and asked a large group of people, their players, is it too early for pumpkin spice season? Here were their very scientific answers, including, I believe, an intense argument between Matty Elwell and Stam Sop.
Is it too soon for pumpkin spice in your life? I think so, yeah. It's got to get a little bit colder. It's hot out here.
Oh, yeah, way too soon.
It's hot. No. The pumpkin cold brew from Starbucks is good, but I don't love pumpkin spice either. Also, it's freaking August. This is like Target when they put all the fall candles out. Can't even give us Memorial Day.
They all announce it like middle of August because they make so much money.
People literally go crazy for
Who did?
Halloween.
That's
Pumpkin
what I'm
spice,
saying.
anything
I'm like
fall.
looking at them. I was like, it's the middle of August.
If Halloween's your favorite holiday, red flag.
I kind of love Halloween. Red flag. Really? If it's
I'm-
your favorite holiday.
I'm Team Sam Staub on this one. If Halloween is your favorite holiday, I have questions. I mean, not necessarily. I'm not a full red flag, but I have questions. It is certainly not my favorite holiday. Chris, are you too early for pumpkin spice in August or no?
I don't care about the pumpkin spice one way or the other. It's the pumpkin ales that are already on the shelves that annoy me.
That is kind of the alternate version of the same conversation. I do love a pumpkin ale or pumpkin beer.
Yeah, but
some
not
of
in
them are very
August.
good. Yeah, August is a little fast. There needs to be a crispness in the air. I think there are some people that like it, and I'm kind of a don't yuck other people's yums. If people want it all year round, okay, but just say you want it all year round, not that August is the appropriate time. That's really all I'm saying. All right, Hard Knocks continuing on HBO, and they opened last night or Tuesday night's episode with a mentalist coming in and blowing the minds of every single New York Jets player, including Aaron Rodgers.
I want you to hold the cards up, and I want you to look through those cards and just think of any one of those cards you see. Ice cold, under pressure. I like what I'm seeing. Put them in your hands, and then put your other hand on top and twist it like a pancake so we can't see anything. Can't get to him, nothing. All right? Fair? Think red, black. Think hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades. See that reaction, that flinch? I know which way you're throwing the ball. It's a diamond, am I right? Yeah. I'm gonna do you one better than guess it. I'm gonna find it. Hold your hands tight. Don't take it out. Don't move. Don't move. Let me reach in just a little. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there. 22 down. Tell us all, out of that whole deck, what card you think of. Say it.
3 of diamonds.
3 of diamonds. Well, hold on. Hold on.
So to set up the visual, what you're missing here on what's about to happen in this clip. Previously, he had given one of Rodgers' teammates sitting next to him a sketch pad full of animals that are not NFL teams. So like there was no lions, there was no bears in there. And so told him to flip to a random page, look at it, remember what it was, remember the animal, which leads us to...
Tell us, what'd you think of?
I was a goldfish.
A goldfish?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yes.
I got you. Look in your hands, Aaron.
And Aaron Rodgers all of a sudden pulls out a card-shaped glass case where the stack of cards used to be that has a goldfish inside it. I don't know how he did it, and it's freaky, and I don't like it. Are you pro or anti-mentalist, Chris?
Is he just a magician? That's what I was...
I mean, kind of. I don't know. It seems like a very specific kind of magic.
It looked fun. I don't know. I'm for it,
all,
I guess.
Like, it's all
fun.
sleight of hand. It's all
Yeah.
confusing, but like, man, it's weird. Last but not least, my good friend Kevin Brown is going to take us out. He's going to sing some Blink-182 while explaining to his broadcast partner what the hell he's doing.
Don't tell me you don't know Blink-182.
I'll be honest, never heard of Blink-182.
Are you kidding me?
Sounds like a fighter jet to me.
Get out of here. You don't know Blink-182?
I probably know the song.
Yeah. All the small things?
Sing it for me. I might recognize it.
Small things.
Oh, okay, don't sing it anymore.
Tom DeLonge is at a lot of Padres games. Big fan. I Miss You. You don't know that one?
I mean, I might if I could hear the song.
Tom has this like very distinct nasally voice. So he goes, "Where are you? And I'm so sorry."
Now I recognize
You
it.
do. You
yeah,
got
you
it
sound
now.
just
Thank
like him.
you.
Yeah.
About time. I definitely believe you, 100%.
Courtesy of Masson, courtesy of the greatness of my great friend Kevin Brown, who is much more than a guy who got banned for reading a basic statistic on a broadcast. Hi. All right, that's it for the show today. We'll see you tomorrow. Clinton Yates on the program, and more practice recaps will get you set for Baltimore on Monday. See you then.